What if Naruto was Sun's heir, Death's guardian? A Hero's Peril Season 2 Part 3. Reading. Sun's Heir, Death's Guardian 2, A Hero's Peril by Engineer Forever. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Chapter 3. Naruto reached down and picked a rock up, chucking it at the fleeing group of teenagers that had drove by and hit him with a water balloon, sons of bitches. The gods and demigods broke into snickers. Okay, that's a way to start a chapter, said Taliah with a smile. Ah, come on Naruto, it's not that bad, Taliah said between her laughter while next to her Piper had broke into peals of laughter. Taliah and Piper smiled at one another. They had been walking for a good 10 minutes when the jeep full of teenage guys rolled up alongside them, hooting and hollering. Artemis scrunched her nose. Pigs, she said in distaste along with a nodding Taliah, whose arms were also crossed. Naruto told them to buzz off, and in retaliation they threw a water balloon at him. Immature pigs, said the goddess of the hunt, correcting her previous statement. So, boys in general? Taliah asked with a smirk, getting one back from her patron and pouts from the boys in the chamber. Not that bad, Taliah-chan, look at me. Naruto gestured to his crotch angrily, I look like I pissed myself. One of the best parts of water powers, said Percy. He smirked widely at seeing the blonde get pranked. Taliah rolled her eyes while Piper bit on her lip to try and stop her laughter at the older teen's predicament. The raven-haired demigoddess patted her disgruntled and embarrassed boyfriend on the cheek. Leaning in, she whispered, why not dry it off, hot stuff? Ooh, Taliah's getting her flirt on, Piper said with a giggle. And in front of you, said Leo, a chuckle escaping him. The Native American girl blanched at that. She didn't want to see that. Naruto's angrily furrowed brows relaxed as he mulled over her words and he blinked before groaning and covering his eyes with one hand. Dragging the hand down his face, he muttered incoherently before he smiled at his girlfriend and cupped her face in his hands. After breaking away from a kiss on the lips, Naruto whispered to her, I knew there was a reason I kept you around. Because I keep your head on your shoulders? Taliah asked knowingly with a triumphant look. Nico rolled his eyes. More likely because he overthinks things and needs you to simplify it for him. Smirking at him, Taliah stepped back and put a hand on Piper's shoulder. The younger demigoddess, a bit embarrassed from watching the couple kiss. Oh, you'll get used to it, her mother said in an effort to assure her, much to the flustered girl's chagrin. Gave her a confused brow. In response, Taliah just said, just watch. You'll see. Naruto cracked his neck before clapping his hands together and then said, okay, haven't had to heat myself up in a while. Here we go. Closing his eyes and tilting his head back, Naruto dropped his hands to his sides and relaxed his body, letting his chakra flow speed up and heating his body. Piper opened her mouth to ask what he was doing when she saw it. In a blink of the eyes, the blonde demigod became a living being of golden light. It was different from his god mode, not blindingly bright, but just enough to accent his sun-kissed skin tone as well as heat up his body, enough to the point that his pants immediately dried and looked good as new. Opening his still blue eyes, Naruto was the first to see the gobsmacked look on Piper McLean's face. My kid. The sun god shook his head in amusement. Even when drying his pants, he makes it epic. Wow. The young demigoddess uttered. She looked up at Taliah before looking back at Naruto. Your boyfriend is hot. Piper squeaked. I didn't mean it like that. Jason put a hand over his chest. I'm hurt, Piper. Jason. He laughed at his girlfriend's red face. Jason made a joke, said Leo to Frank. We need to prepare for the end of the world. Dude, said Jason to his friend with a frown. Taliah faltered for a moment, prompting Naruto to grin as he lost his glow. He then vanished, the light bending around him and his clothes. Piper blinked and started to look around for the teen only to swivel around when Taliah made a noise of surprise. She was shocked to see Naruto hugging Taliah from behind with a roguish grin on his whiskered face. See that, Taliah-chan? Naruto asked his squirming girlfriend as he sent shivers up her spine by expelling small bursts of chakra from his arms, the equivalent of a tickle. That must be fun to play with, Aphrodite said in keen interest, a gleam in her eye. Groans were heard from Artemis and Talia. It was so like her to speak up for that, just so typical. He nodded to the 13-year-old and continued, even Piper thinks I'm irresistible. I do not. Well, he is blonde and has blue eyes. Nico trailed off with a grin, getting Piper even more flustered. Hey, I never said that. Piper interjected with a small frown, I just said you were hot. Literally. Say it as you may, it is true both ways, said the love goddess with a smirk. The still smirking Naruto replied before leaving a peck on Talia's cheek. The younger girl rolled her eyes while Talia lightly elbowed her boyfriend with a faint blush over her own crossing her cheeks. Oh, she loves the little stuff. Annabeth snickered, but then again, so did the blonde girl of wisdom. The son of Apollo merely chuckled and released his girlfriend. That's enough goofing off. We've got maybe a 15-minute walk before we get to the tunnel, Naruto said to the two before he dramatically pointed away, Alan's why. Aphrodite giggled at the French as Apollo smiled widely. Oh, Doctor Who, nice reference. He nodded happily. The blonde demigod took off in a run, making Talia shake her head at his antics. Piper just stared at his running form in disbelief, turning to Talia and asking, is he always like that? Only after he forces his energy to speed up, Talia explained with a smile as they followed the now hyperactive teen, he'll calm back down after a few minutes. Let's hope it isn't an everyday occurrence, Demeter said, seeing the blonde boy bouncing around wildly. He's nice, Piper said after a brief silence. Talia glanced at her and the demigoddess continued, I mean, he's more, and you're, You mean they don't seem to fit together, yet somehow do. Percy said, getting a few laughs, but a scowl from Talia. He's a goof and I'm kind of rough, right? Talia asked, getting a meek nod from the younger girl. Talia gave her a small smile and then looked back at her boyfriend that was now walking on his hands a few feet in front of them. Wow, it's like Leo on coffee, said Jason with a blink of disbelief. Dude, harsh, consider it payback for earlier. The daughter of Zeus lightly giggled, Talia. Percy said turning to Annabeth. Giggling. Annabeth said turning to Percy, before both broke out into laughter. Talia looked pouty at the laughs, but disgruntled that she was giggling. Giggling. Of all the. At his actions before she spoke again, that's just how we are. He's more touchy-feely than me. Well, duh, Apollo said, drawling out the phrase and making a perfect copy of Mr. D's voice, much to the wine god's displeasure. How did you two even meet? Piper asked, watching the blonde as he stopped walking on his hands and flipped forward to his feet. Yes, background, Aphrodite said with a cheer, getting everyone to listen in eagerly. Nice Piper, we can finally find out, Annabeth said with an excited nod. That's actually a pretty funny story, replied the daughter of Zeus. Talia's eyes glossed over and a more serene smile crossed her face as she thought back to when they met. Talia panted as she and Luke rounded another corner, their frantic running coming to a halt. They had just left the house of Halcyon Green. Talia sent her patron's brother a glare, but he didn't even blink at it. His face was stony at the mentioning of the prophetic man. A house filled with monsters determined to kill them because of who their parents were, and all she got out of it was a bracelet that turned into a shield. A badass shield, mind you, but still, there could have been more than just a shield and monsters, like something that did more than scare them away for a bit. Talia let out a sigh at the thought of those days. If she were honest, she missed them. Despite being on the run most of the time, it was really the best days of her life, but she was content where she was now, in the hunt with her new family. Looking around, she discovered they had entered an alley filled with scraps of iron, most likely from the nearby iron factory yard that they were separated from by a chain-link fence. Hey, looks like we'll be meeting again, Annabeth said as she smiled to her friend who smiled back. We should rest here, Luke suggested, still regaining his breath. Hermes let out a sad sigh, feeling a little miserable at seeing his son so young, so much more innocent than in his final hours. Talia nodded to the boy slightly older than herself before both plopped down with their backs to the building on their left. They could still hear faint roars and crashing from their pursuers, but at least they could rest for now. Jason frowned. He felt guilty because while he was safe in camp, his sister was on the run constantly. It seemed he was the lucky one of the two sadly. They got that rest for about 5 seconds before a rattling sound was heard. Luke and Talia both scrambled to their feet, readying their weapons and searching the alleyway. Luke noticed it first, pointing a few feet away at a shaking sheet of corrugated iron leaning against the building with his free hand. There. Me, Annabeth said as she pointed to herself in a cheerfully. It can't be a monster, Talia whispered, could it? We have to be ready for anything, replied the elfish teen, cover me. Talia rolled her eyes but turned around nonetheless and watched the entrance to the alley. Luke carefully and quietly stepped towards it, his shaking hand reaching out to grasp the sheet of iron. He took a deep breath before grabbing the iron and pulling it back. Got you. Yes he does, said Talia with a chuckle. Ah, screamed a young girl that was hiding behind the iron. She was short, as were most children, and had blonde hair pulled into a ponytail. Before Luke could recover from his shock at finding a kid, the young blonde girl with eyes squeezed shut charged forward, brandishing a small black knife that she used to slash at him. That didn't happen, Annabeth said, sputtering as she wondered where her hammer was. Luke released a surprised cry of pain as it cut him across the front of his chest. Wow Annabeth, just wow, Hermes said with a deadpan look at his niece. It didn't happen like that. Well, I think she was playing it smart, Athena said. Who knows who was going to expose her, thus she went for a swift first strike. She nodded in approval, getting a smile from her daughter. Thankfully not deep enough for anything serious, but surprised him enough to make him fall to his back. Talia turned around at the girl's scream, but didn't recover from her own surprise to stop the girl from cutting her friend. When the younger girl did climb on top of Luke and brought the knife above her head to stab him, the raven-haired girl acted, rushing forward and tackling the younger girl off of him. Wow, trying for a first degree in murder? Leo asked her in bewilderment. Annabeth flushed, not knowing what to say about the scene. Wait a minute, she almost stabbed him, Piper exclaimed, cutting Talia off. The cry got their now calmed down quest leader's attention. Yes, Piper, get them to explain, Annabeth said. She needed to save herself some face at this new way of meeting her friends. Who almost stabbed who? Naruto asked curiously as they neared the Caldecott tunnel. Talia smiled and nudged her boyfriend with her arm. She asked how we met. Oh, Naruto said with an understanding nod before he grinned, Annie stabbing Luke. And he's grinning about it. The child of wisdom cried out in indignation. Yep, Talia said with a nod. Why would she stab at him? Piper asked curiously. Everyone listened with interest. Stab first, ask questions later, the couple answered in unison. Nice policy, Ares said as he nodded in agreement. No it isn't, said Annabeth while she frowned with pink dusting across her cheeks. Talia nudged the blonde's arm. This idiot can be so paranoid at times. Oh, so I learned it from him, said the blonde girl. She crossed her arms with a frown. Some role model he was. I'd rather you be alive and guilty of murder than you dead, Naruto replied softly. Ah, said Aphrodite with a smile. Everyone just gave her this disbelieving look. Well, Ares didn't as he approved once again with a nod. Making Talia smile at him. He cleared his throat and nudged her. Well go on. I want to hear how awesome you thought I was. Talia snorted in amusement. You wish, Talia retorted before she continued. Wrenching the blade from the girl's hand, Talia exclaimed, Relax. Relax. We aren't going to hurt you. Would have saved us the trouble if she didn't do that, Ares said with a grunt, ignoring the scathing glare he got from Hermes. What? The girl asked, opening her eyes and revealing two gray eyes to the older girl. She looked at Talia, then Luke, before scooting away and glaring at them. Who are you? Where's Naruto? Where is he? What did you do to him? Priorities for the blonde much? Nico asked the girl in question, who was looking red in the face. Geez, how attached was she to this guy? Who are you talking about? Talia asked as she sat back on her knees. Why the handsome protagonist of this story you fall in love for, Apollo said with a cheerful grin. And then looked down at the girl's knife in her hand. What kind of dagger is this? Who are you and where's Naruto? Demanded the young girl. One-track mind here, Leo said with an eye roll. Geez, Percy's got some competition after all. His joke got a scowl from both Percy and Annabeth, though the girl was still pink at the notion. Talia was looking at the knife and then looked back at the girl as she made the correct assumption that the girl before them was another demigod. Luke, who had gotten over his shock and had managed to confirm his cut wasn't too bad, walked over to Talia's side. Raising his hands, he said, "Easy. I'm Luke, and this is Talia. We're demigods, too." The girl's eyes flickered between them distrustfully. "Ouch," Talia said and turned to Annabeth with wounded eyes. "Annie, so mean." Her teasing earned her pout from the daughter of Athena. Before she answered, Annabeth chase. "Where's Naruto?" Percy grit his teeth and tried not to say anything. "We don't know anyone named Naruto," Luke answered as Talia got to her feet. The three of them tensed when there was a rather loud boom. "Looks like Blondie's fighting it up," Ares grinned widely. The kid was entertaining to watch. Annabeth looked to the building Talia and Luke had rested against in worry, making the two older demigods follow her gaze. "Look, kid, we need to get moving," Talia said, taking a step towards the girl and offering her the strange weapon. "Here's your dagger." "It's called a kunai," Annabeth answered with a frown as she took the weapon. "I get a ninja knife." Annabeth grinned. "Okay, that is sweet. I'm not going anywhere without Naruto." "Get a new phrase," said Ares as he groaned in annoyance. Seriously, it was getting old. "We don't have a chance if we stay here," Luke whispered to Talia before looking at Annabeth. "Listen, Annabeth, we can't wait here for Naruto. It's not safe." "I'm not going," Annabeth cried back, lifting her kunai up defensively, "not without Naruto." "Wow, really attached to the guy, huh?" Piper asked her with a smirk. Annabeth's flush kept changing to pink and red. "Seriously, to the point you would aim a weapon at us," said Talia with a disbelieving blink. "Ah, she really said that?" Naruto asked with a smile. "Sweet little thing, Annie is. She makes me so proud to be her brother." "I'll bet," Annabeth said as she puffed up in pride. Talia groaned and opened her mouth to argue once more when there was a louder boom. The three demigods all turned to their left at the building, where Talia and Luke had rested, as another loud bang came from within. They took a weary step back when dust shot out from the side in between the bricks. Annabeth shakily raised her kunai while Talia and Luke prepared their own weapons. "This is going to be an interesting meet and fight," Talia said blandly, but curious how her other got smitten with the blonde boy of the sun. There was another shot of dust before Talia was forced to raise her shield to protect herself from the debris as the wall exploded. Out skidded a giant metal bull, gleaming bronze in the streetlight, breaking through the chain-link fence and slamming against a giant bin. "Oh, not the bulls," said Percy with a groan. The Smith god chuckled a little bit. "Okay, yeah, we never fought that thing," said the hunter. She smirked. "I blame Naruto." From the still settling dust, walked out a panting teen. His blonde hair wild and untamed. He stood about as tall as Luke, but dressed in jeans with a strange black box strapped to his left leg and a white jacket with red flames that glistened unnaturally bright in the night. "That's because it's his awesome jacket, it's supposed to billow and shine all on its own," said Apollo with a grin. In his left hand was a golden bow that shone like the sun and slung over his shoulders was a quiver. "And he looked so hot and badass," said Apollo, stage whispering and making Talia scowl at him, but Artemis gave a light-hearted laugh that got a pout from the hunter. "And he was handsome, right?" Naruto pried while looking at his girlfriend. Talia glanced at him for a good moment before smiling. Yes, I suppose he was handsome." "Knew it," said Piper as she smirked. A disgruntled Talia glanced at her with a frown. "Yes," Naruto said with a fist pump. He'd never gotten her to say it in public. "That's because of her tough girl image, can't have that ruined after all," Nico said with a roll of his eyes. Piper rolled her eyes while Talia shook her head and continued. "You are a pain in the ass to kill," the teen said with a cough before slinging the bow over his shoulder. "Well, I did make them," Hephaestus said with a rub of his beard. "Arrows don't do jack," your body is made of metal and it takes a friggin' Udama Rasengan, great ball spiraling sphere, to send you packing. Naruto. Annabeth cried out in joy and relief. She made to run to him when a raised hand kept her in place. Now heal, Ares said mockingly, getting his sister to glare at him. Annabeth also joined in for the patented Athena glare. Stay back, Annie, the teen, Naruto ordered as he looked towards them. Hardly giving them the time, the teen looked back at the bull and frowned. Colchis bull. You just had to be a Colchis bull. So how's he going to do it? Percy asked. I mean, we had Tyson to help us, but I wonder what he'll do. The Colchis bull snorted and let out a fiery snort before a mechanical roar escaped its mouth. Naruto grinned and cracked his knuckles. All right, let's do this. He held his hands up in a strange form, hand seal. Naruto interjected with a frown. Hey, stop interrupting the story, said Apollo. The other gods nodded in agreement as they wanted to hear more. Whatever, the daughter of Zeus replied as her eyes rolled. He held his hands up in a hand seal that looked like he was crossing his index and middle fingers. Suddenly there was an exact replica of the teen, making Talia and Luke's jaws drop. What a lucky girl she is, said Aphrodite. The Lady of Doves grinned wolfishly while Talia blanched. Would she stop mentioning that? Hold on, replica, you can clone yourself, Piper asked. I thought Apollo was the god of the sun and prophecies. Well, we are omnipotent, said Apollo with a smirk, getting nods all around. Gift from my mom, Naruto answered as he snapped his fingers and a duplicate appeared. He punched it and it disappeared just as quickly. Give me an open field and I could make an army. Only downside is, that army could be eradicated in one strike. Still an amazing tool for fodder, said Ares. He grinned at the thought of an army of mini Helios to fight. Oh, what a battle that would be. It gets weirder than that, trust me, Talia comforted the disbelieving demigoddess before continuing with her story. Yeah, Piper, wait and see, said Annabeth through her snickers. The original's hand extended and the clone cupped his hands over it. The one with his hand extended continued to speak, maybe a few more Rasengans will bust you up. The Colchis bull reared its head back and then flicked it forward, a saw blade flying from a slot in the center of its head. Annabeth cried out the teen's name as the blade sliced through the new duplicate. Annabeth was staring at her other intently, wanting to know the full story between her and Naruto. Rather than fall to the ground, the body exploded into smoke, making Naruto look over at it. Naruto dryly finished. His hand fell to his side and he laughed nervously. Well, look at that. You shoot discs. I like them to be unique. The fire god laughed out. The Colchis bull released a mechanical bellow and charged at Naruto. The blonde yelped and dove into a roll towards the three demigods, avoiding the charge. Coming out of his roll into a crouch, pulling a knife from the container on his leg and tossing it as the bull stumbled over itself in an effort to turn. Unique and stupid it seems, said Ares as he mocked his crippled brother, getting a heated glare from the smith. The beast was struck in the eye, making it veer into the wall of the building, slowing it down and making it stop. If she had to be honest with herself, it was very impressive. Making that metal beast move with just a shot to the eye, most impressive, said Artemis with a smile to her other's nephew. Naruto rose up and turned around, running towards them. Talia could see his shirt, or rather, what remained of it. Scorch marks covered an ironically burnt orange t-shirt, revealing hints of a toned torso underneath. That you just want to run your fingers across, said Annabeth in a whisper to the hunter. Okay, it's getting old, stop, like right now, Talia said, annoyed. There were no promises made by the smirking blonde. And you liked what you saw. Ow, Naruto exclaimed when Talia shoved him into the wall of the hidden shaft within the Caldecott. Rubbing his shoulder he asked, why are you so mean to me? She loves you so much, Piper said with a flutter of her eyes. Call it tough love, Talia replied with a smirk before she resumed telling the snickering Piper the story of their first meeting. Yeah, I would laugh at that, the charm speaker said with a smirk. Naruto ran past Talia, turning to the side and grabbing Annabeth under her shoulders, picking her up and running. She was so small, it must have been easy, said Talia with a grin directed at the pouting Annabeth. Over his shoulder the blonde cried out, Ru-Yu-Yun. Tactical retreat. Never gets old. Right, Minerva, Ares asked tauntingly to his sister, who looked like she wanted to stab him in the throat. Talia and Luke exchanged a glance before following after him. Cue the Scooby-Doo chase theme, Leo said, and getting laughs all around. It does seem like that, said Piper. And we ran, and ran, and ran. Naruto cut in with a smile on his face before he laughed, almost lost it at an intersection, though. Remember that. How could I forget? The look on that guy's face when his newsstand was destroyed out of nothing. Talia laughed along with her boyfriend. Ah, missed, how you do things, Percy said in a wistful tone. He grumbled irritably. Still wish I could use it. I know. His girlfriend nodded, patting him on the shoulder. The two smiled in remembrance as they walked, before Naruto's eyes widened and he walked ahead of the two girls, turning around and walking backwards. Ooh, can I tell the next part? Naruto asked, looking at the raven-haired girl with a pleading pout. Please. Yes, let's hear it from both perspectives, Demeter said with a nod at the idea. No, I'm telling the story, Talia said with a smirk. Please, he's my kid. I bet he could tell it so much better, said Apollo with a scoff. I'll make that face, threatened the son of Apollo. Talia stopped walking, making the other two copy her. Piper's brows furrowed as she looked between the two, wondering what that face was. You wouldn't dare, Talia said as her face fell into a look of slight fear. Oh, someone's scared, said Nico with a snicker, getting pushed by the blushing hunter. Oh, just try me, Naruto said, his whiskered cheeks widening in a smile that made the daughter of Zeus' spine freeze. In a good way or a bad way? Aphrodite asked. Neither, Talia said, her blush darkening. I swear to the gods if you do what I think you're going to do all. Talia tried to counter, only succeeding in making Naruto grin. Be stunned speechless, Jason asked innocently. He chuckled at Talia's glare. A warm blush started to spread across her cheeks as she recalled the last time Naruto used that face, on the quest for Artemis. The image she saw shortly afterwards, the child with hair as dark as her own yet with eyes as blue as his, the face that laughed at her in her dreams of hope that is. The females cooed at Talia, who had ducked into her jacket. Not the kid thing again. You know how easy it is for me, Naruto teased, raising his left hand's index and middle fingers, just one flare of chakra. You infuriate me sometimes, Naruto Uzumaki, Talia growled. In all the best ways, said the blonde gray-eyed girl with a knowing look to her friend. Seriously, stop, Naruto grinned, moving in a flash of light and reappearing with his arms wrapped around her. He brought his forehead down against hers, a smile on his face. Other Piper. Close your eyes, they're going to make out, right now. Leo said in mock distress. Piper just frowned and pushed him for being an idiot. Glad that there's one way I can keep you in line, he joked before kissing her deeply. Jerk, said Talia. She pouted with a red face. Seriously, did he have to do it with an audience around? After a moment of their originally chaste lip lock, Piper flushed bright red as Talia relaxed into the kiss, wrapping her arms around his neck and turning it very intimate. I'm right there, Piper said in disbelief. Seems they don't care, sweetie, said her mother with a smirk. And at times, that is perfectly fine. The young demigoddess wanted to say something, interrupt maybe, but there was a part of her that didn't want to. Definitely your mother's influence, Hazel said cheekily, much to Piper's dismay. Some part of her wanted what the two in front of her had. She may be a tomboy, but that didn't mean she wasn't a girl, scratch that, human. All humans crave companionship, from the simplest of friends to the deep significant others. Maybe someday. She waiting for Superman, Leo sang out, getting smiles from the couple targeted. For now, Piper gathered enough nerve to clear her throat, causing the two to break from their minor make-out session. Talia blushed while Naruto grinned. Shameless, Artemis said about her nephew, but there was a tiny smile tugging on her face. Moving to keep his right arm over the raven-haired daughter of Zeus' shoulders to keep her from hiding away, the blonde guardian looked at the bright red-faced and glaring daughter of Tristan McLean. Where were we? Naruto asked before nodding. Right. Killing the Colchis bull. Well, after we got through Richmond, we made it to a nice little park. I handed Annabeth to a clone and led the bull away. Hop onto the clone express. Shut up, said Annabeth with a hiss while Leo snickered. Split up. Naruto instructed the group as he handed Annabeth to his clone. Talia broke off after him, Luke after the clone carrying the concerned Annabeth. The Colchis bull chased after the original blonde, bleeding out fire as it did so. Bet they wished they had someone like me there, Leo said. Yes, the perfect shield for fire, said Talia as she teased the Latino boy. Damn rig, hey, any more bright ideas? Talia asked as she followed the older teen. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the running bull and then looked ahead of him. There was a bench that would maybe give them a millisecond of extra time if they ran around it, and beyond that was a pond. I've got it, exclaimed the blonde with a grin. Pointing at the bench, he continued, run past the bench. Get to the pond. Then what? The raven-haired demigoddess asked. We go fishing. So negative. Listen to blonde, said Apollo with crossed arms as he leaned back into his throne. Just trust me, Naruto said as they approached the bench. As Talia ran around it, Naruto jumped over the bench with ease, while their pursuer smashed through it like it was nothing. Naruto looked behind him at the bull before tossing another kunai at the mechanical monster. Piercing another eye, the bull roared in fury as it started to trip. Bull's eye. A bit late there on the joke, Frank, Leo said with a shake of his head, getting the husky boy to frown. Naruto dove at Talia, tackling her to the ground and out of the way of the tripping Colchis bull. The bull went head under hooves into the pond, entering the small pool of water with a large splash. Naruto grunted when he got drenched, rolling to his back next to the younger demigoddess. They waited for a moment before Naruto stood, looking down into the pond. Stupid machine, said the teen as a grin started to come over his face. The Smith god frowned at that, while Leo crossed his arms. Do not diss the tech. Cupping his hands around his mouth, Naruto called out, regroup. He turned and offered Talia his hand. That was fun, right? He's insane, said the hunter while she shook her head in disbelief. Fun? You call almost dying fun? Talia questioned in disbelief. My other fully agrees. Naruto shrugged. Yeah, well, you only live once, right? He said as she took his hand. Pulling her up, Naruto smiled down at the shorter girl, making her blush under his fox-like grin. Liar. I didn't blush, Talia interjected with a frown. See, said Talia, her other knew the score. Oh, yes you did, Naruto said with rolled eyes. Talia was grumbling about stupid fox-faced blondes with shiny smiles. Besides, you even told me you like my smile. I think that was last week, even. Piper bit on her lip to keep from laughing when Talia blushed and stormed ahead. These two were better than television sometimes. So glad we amuse you, Talia said dryly to her brother's girlfriend. Naruto chuckled before looking back at the 13-year-old, she'll get over it. He looked at the raven-haired girl with spiky hair that went down to her shoulders. She had a face that would narrow out from cute into beautiful. Apollo whistled and Talia blushed at the blonde's description of her. Two electric blue eyes that looked back up at him in curiosity. A large leather jacket with a few scratches here and there, but otherwise looked good on her. In her right hand was a spear and around her left arm was a shield with the face of Medusa plastered on it. The shield made him pause, taking it into his hand. Aegis? He asked, blinking in shock when the shield shrunk down into a bracelet. That was cool. Okay, that was just plain lucky, the hunter said. No way, he just knew how to do that. How did you know to do that? Talia asked, before blushing once more as she realized he was still holding onto her. Let go of my arm. Oh, she likey, Talia cried out in anger while throwing her arms in the air. The damn love goddess was out to get her. Sorry, apologized the blonde. He reached up and scratched at the back of his head. I do a lot of reading and watch out. Naruto shoved the girl away from him, making her stumble back as the Colchis bull suddenly barreled into his side, sending him rolling into the park. Saved your ass, again, said Ares as he jeered to the hunter, much to her annoyance. He heard his name called out by a familiar voice, eyes widening when he realized who that voice belonged to, Annabeth. Pushing himself to a seated position, Naruto groaned and looked through a squinted eye at the mechanically bronze monster that snorted fire standing a good 40 feet from him. The slit in its head opened and a saw blade made of bronze was revealed, spinning rapidly as its head reared back. Naruto faltered for words, thinking of how he was going to get out of this. Simple. Like the badass you are. The boy's father waved off his son's concern. Oh come on, you say that all the time, Ares said with a roll of his fiery eyes. Only because it's true. Grabbing his bow and an arrow, Naruto knocked the small bronze arrow in place, swallowing as he took aim. The world around him slowed down as he focused on the launched projectile. He released his arrow, sending it flying and knocking the approaching death weapon off course. The saw flipped in the air before landing harmlessly to the side. Like a boss. Okay, that was just plain classy, said Talia as she nodded and agreed with the archer god. Naruto and the Colchis bull stared at one another before the bull bellowed out a roar, fire leaving its mouth as it did so. It charged forward and Naruto prepared himself to jump when there was a boom of thunder. Talia crossed her arms with a smirk. The bull paid no mind to this and continued to charge, until a bolt of lightning struck it. The hunter just buffed her nails on her jacket. No need for an applause, she said, sounding smug. Jason rolled his eyes, he could do that, too. He just wasn't there. Naruto had to shield his eyes with his arm, carefully watching as the beast was electrocuted into death. Gold dust spilled from the monster as it fell, allowing him to see the raven-haired, spear-wielding demigoddess standing behind where the Colchis bull once stood. Her left hand was extended and her breathing was heavy. Takes a lot out of us, said Jason as he nodded towards his sister, who nodded back. But it was damn well worth it. You can use lightning, he asked as Annabeth, the clone and Luke rejoined them. The girl took in another breath before she nodded, making Naruto's brow furrow, but, that would mean. Talia Grace, Talia said introducing herself as she rested on her spear, daughter of Zeus. The super pervert is your dad. The gods broke out into laughter, gasping for air while Zeus was turning an interesting shade of purple. A super pervert. Nailed it, Poseidon said with a laugh. He's hired, 3 times over, said Hades with a chuckle. Both of you can join father, said the purple-faced king. Talia gaped at him while the sky boomed in anger. Luke likewise had a look of shock on his face. Their surprise was broken when the blonde's clone exploded after Annabeth had escaped its clutches. She ran forward and wrapped her arms around Naruto's leg, making the taller blonde look down at her in surprise and then with a smile. A hand on the young demigoddess' head, he looked back up at the other demigods with a grin. Attached at the hip, Talia said as she teased the blonde girl, getting a disgruntled look from her friend. The hunter still smiled though, payback was a bitch. That's cool, at least you know who your parent is, he said, name's Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Nice to meet you, Talia-chan. Thus the pet name was born. Piper said as she smiled towards Talia, who playfully rolled her eyes, but smiled back nonetheless. And the name stuck ever since, Talia groaned jokingly, making Naruto grin at her. She had gotten over her little temper tantrum and fell back in line with them. Faster than you ever could, Hades mocked his brother, getting the still disgruntled Zeus to rumble a bit. Where Naruto promptly threw his arm around her shoulders once again. It wasn't like she minded. The sun-eyed blonde poked his girlfriend's side with his free hand. Oh, you know you love it. Maybe now I do, Whiskers, Talia retorted, but back then it was annoying as hell. Hold on, there's something I don't get, Piper said as they came closer to the exit door. Naruto and Talia looked at the younger girl, making her continue with her question. Talia, you said Naruto's eyes were blue. But now they have this. Sun in them. Did he have it then, too? Her inner need for detailed drama is rising. The Lady of Doves said with a proud beaming smile, getting a horrified face from her daughter. Nope, Talia said, looking at her boyfriend's eyes with a small smile, he just showed up with them last year. And showed up Percy like a chump. Ares added, getting a glare from his demigod rival. Has to do with my title. Helios Heir, Naruto explained with a shrug, hopefully I'll have to demonstrate and not show you in battle. Well, with those ninjas right behind you, I think it's going to be a battle, Hermes said. Oh, and right in front of CJ, now that is going to be fun to see. Ares said with an eager look on his scarred face. If you say so, Piper mumbled as her eyes went to the door, so that's it then. Sort of. We still have a long walk ahead of us, Naruto explained as he reached out and pressed his hand against the door, but I guess this reveal will have to do. Pushing the door open, Naruto revealed a bright sunlit area, a grassy plain and in the distance, a walled city. As the three exited the Caldecott Tunnel's hidden entrance, Talia and Piper stared at the walled city. Nice to see home again, Jason said with a smile, getting nods of agreement from Hazel and Frank. Naruto extended his arms and took a few steps forward. Ladies, welcome to the home of the Romans. Welcome to Camp Jupiter. And so the big moment comes a step closer, said Aphrodite as she grinned. Oh, it is going to be fantastic. As the three walked forward, their mysterious pursuer silently slipped out of the tunnel. The two dark eyes narrowed once more and he dug into his pocket, pulling out a kunai not unlike the ones Naruto carried, with a tag already wrapped around it. His headband, strapped to his arm, had the kanji for shinobi engraved in it. Spinning the kunai in his finger by the small hole at the end, the shinobi threw the blade down a few feet in front of him, where it dug into the ground. There was a large cloud of smoke and three figures joined the first. One stepped forward, calm and collected. Is he here? Just a few paces ahead, replied the one who had summoned them. We'll take him before he can alert this camp of our presence. Oh, said Jason with a grin, a challenging urge rising in him. They really think they can win. Stupid morons, they haven't met Terminus yet, have they? Hazel asked through her snickers. I almost feel sorry for them, Percy said while giving the three Romans a knowing look. He's not going to go quietly, one growled at the summoner, who glared back at him. Well, tough. He had his chance to come in peacefully, the summoner shot back. Because maybe he has more important stuff to do than help some guys who can't take a hint, said Percy blandly. The four turned their gazes to the back of the laughing blonde that had thrown his arm around that of the raven-haired girl. Just don't attack the girls. They're his precious people. Well, he doesn't know Piper that much yet, but attacking Talia. I think the sun boy would go loco on yo asses, said Leo. Fine, spat the growling figure before throwing a finger in the summoner's face. I want it on the record that I don't like this. No one cares, said Ares with a grunt. Orders are orders, the summoner replied solemnly. His gaze went to the back of the blonde's head. Finally, some action. The war god cheered. In the next chapter, Hestia said to her nephew and making him grumble. As the three approached a bridge that would take them across the river to Camp Jupiter, Piper noticed a statue of a man with no arms. A giant cinderblock seemed to make up his lower half and was marked with the letters, Termi NVS, carved into it. Both she and Talia looked at it oddly, wondering the significance of it. Watch and be amazed at the talking bust, Leo said in a carny voice. And he does it, with no arms, Piper added for effect in a spooky tone. While Naruto redirected himself to approach the statue. Ares grinned. Let the show begin. You are not welcome here, Greeks. The statue said, springing to life with a baritone male voice. Its eyes focused on the blonde and in a word filled with anger, it exclaimed, You. Terminus is angry, Jason said. Terminus smash. With what arms, Leo? Annabeth asked him, getting laughs all around. Yo. The blonde greeted cheerily. Did you miss me, Terminus? Miss you? The statue, Terminus, scoffed. You and your insanity. Wow. Guess he did inherit Apollo's ability to get on your nerves if he's getting armless to freak out. Hermes snickered. It's a gift, said Apollo as he shrugged merrily. Your speech nearly split this camp in two. Oh, Athena said in interest, listening keenly. Speech? Talia asked her boyfriend curiously. Naruto shrugged. Something I said like 5 years back, the blonde said before turning his attention back to the armless statue. You're not still mad, are you? Not still mad. How could I be mad? You only nearly started a riot. Terminus snarled. The Roman demigods just blinked in bewilderment. A riot, in Camp Jupiter. It sounded impossible. Making both of the demigoddesses look at the blonde in confusion. Naruto merely shrugged again. I just thought it was weird as all, the blonde said, all that misplaced anger. Why should they have to keep the rage going? Oh, trying for peace. Boring, said Ares with a thumbs down. Of course you would say that, said Demeter, shaking her head sadly. It is strength that drives them, not anger. Terminus snapped, the Romans are stronger. We are better. Oh you wish, you armless clay statue. Athena hissed darkly. Annabeth gulped a bit from her mother's tone. Maybe, maybe not, Naruto debated, but let me ask you this, god of boundaries, if you were better than the Greeks, you would have noticed my tail before me, wouldn't you? Jason looked surprised, Hazel and Frank turning to each other in alarm. How could Terminus not notice? What? Talia asked, turning around and looking for any sort of person. How long have you known? Since we left the tunnel, Naruto said as he looked intently at Terminus. I was hoping you'd stop them, but you never even noticed, did you? Noticed what? Terminus demanded. Naruto leaned into the statue's face, a frown crossing his own. Raising his right hand, Naruto built chakra into his hand and snapped his fingers next to the statue's head. Terminus' eyes widened and he sputtered before exclaiming, but that's impossible. It's inconceivable. Ah, one of those illusions. Athena surmised with a smile. It seems the armless fool was fooled. Huh, if it could work on a minor god of boundaries, could it work on us? Hermes asked with pursed lips. They seemed to have snuck upon me in my exhausted state in the previous book. Artemis said with a frown. That certainly sent shivers down the backs of the other Olympians. It's shinobi, retorted the blonde before turning around and stepping in front of Talia, first sneaking up on the goddess of the hunt, now breaking through boundaries. What's next? Challenging the king for his throne. Zeus bristled at this notion, his fingers clenching the armrests of his throne. His words were meant with silence, his brows furrowing, thought that would bring you out. Unless, no, you're not really waiting for me to be alone, are you? Kinda stupid. I mean, he's got an entire army behind him. Nico said, it would be a fool's errand to attack his other's guardian. There was not another answer and Naruto allowed a smirk to cross his face. All right, that's clever. I'll give you that. So who's out there this time? Drum roll. Hermes asked the music god. But of course, Apollo grinned, doing so with a drum appearing from out of nowhere. Once more he was met with silence. Apollo pouted, putting his drum to the side until they came out. Reaching into his pocket, Naruto pulled out the pendant his father had given him. He turned around and put the pendant in Talia's hand. Take this and get into the city. Find the praetors. Tell them that camp is under attack. Well, the enemy's done for, now. Jason grinned. That'll show these assassins. You've led enemies to the camp. Terminus shouted in rage. Not intentionally. Naruto retorted before turning his attention back to Talia. Take Piper and go. Get the legion ready. Praetor, prepare the troops. Leo told Jason, who gave a mock salute. I told you that I'm not leaving you behind, Talia growled. Naruto grinned and cupped her left cheek in his hand. You're not leaving me behind, he said, you're getting back up. Some impressive backup, Hazel assured, but paused. She was still in the underworld. Wait, Nico never went to look for Bianca since she's alive now. What was going to happen to her? Talia looked into his eyes before frowning. You infuriate me sometimes, Naruto Uzumaki. Yes, we know you love him, Annabeth said with a playful roll of her eyes, getting a growl from the hunter. Would she stop saying that? Yeah, but you love it, replied the blonde with a wink. Patting her cheek he turned back to face the way they had came, cracking his neck and saying, Terminus, I'd sound the alarm if I were you. An exile defending the camp. Preposterous. Outrageous. The statue raged before his mouth turned upward in a smirk, and yet, just crazy enough to work. Hey, I guess the armless Heps got a like for the blonde despite the havoc he caused, said Ares, who snickered. If there's one thing I despise more than rule breakers, it's losing this camp to invaders. Ad arma, hostibus in porta, ad arms. Enemy at the gate. A siren broke out through the camp beyond the wall, making Naruto grin. You actually had an alarm installed. Wait, you have a legit alarm? Leo asked Jason. The blonde shrugged. It was proposed by the Senate. It seemed like a good idea at the time, Terminus explained before looking at the girls. You two Greeks. You have the blessing of Apollo, get beyond the wall. Open the gates, Jason said with a dramatic flair, getting some laughs. He gets that from you, said Hades to his brother. Zeus glowered at that. Go, Naruto said when Talia and Piper turned to him. He rolled his shoulders and let a smile cross his face. I've got to greet the people at the door. Talia and Piper stared at the team before turning towards the walled camp. The younger demigoddess' hand was taken by the older ones, pulling her along as they crossed the bridge. The gates opened as they approached. Talia lifted the pendant given to her as a girl around Piper's age stepped out with a golden spear in her hand. Golden armor covered her torso, arms and legs, a small purple cape sticking out between her shoulder and her neck. Reina, Piper said in a terse tone, her eyes narrowed. Ain't she? I don't know, pinning for a different blonde this time. Leo asked her as he rolled his eyes. The love child blinked and smiled widely at that fact. She is. The girl smiled brightly, but added, sucks for other Talia, though. We're here because. Talia began only for the girl to point her spear at her. Oh, that little. Talia started up with a growl. Terminus has explained the situation to us. My fellow praetor is preparing his cohort for battle as we speak. We just await Terminus' final word on the intruders now, the girl said before looking around expectantly. So, where is he? Oh yeah, other Talia has some competition. Percy muttered. Talia rolled her eyes. Why, they're dating, and that girl is what? 14 at most. You haven't met Reina. Where is who? Piper asked in confusion, and what's with the siren? The camp is preparing for battle, the girl replied with a frown. Who are you, Greek? Piper McLean. Piper replied, her brows furrowing as something inside her told her to be wary of this girl. And more than just because she's Roman, said Piper, gritting her perfect teeth. And do I look Greek to you? You reek of it, the armored girl replied, lowering her spear slightly, and looked the demigoddesses up and down, and your posture all but screams undisciplined. Stupid Roman hussy, the love child spat out, her eyes a swirl of colors in her anger. Yeah, this is nice and all, but would you let her in already so I can go stop my boyfriend from getting himself killed? Talia asked impatiently. The Roman girl looked at her with a scrutinizing gaze. And so the rival and the lover meet. Aphrodite said with her eyes glued to the scene, a large smile on her face. Artemis groaned in distaste. Yes, I suppose you're right, she said after a moment. I am Reina, praetor of the 12th Legion. Talia, the daughter of Zeus, replied shortly. If only she said grace, Jason said, getting his sister to have this distasteful look upon her features. Forget that, she said with a wrinkle of her nose. Now that the introductions are out of the way, can we get a move on? Their conversation was interrupted as the ground shook. A statue next to them came to life, eyes narrowed in fury and his mouth set in a deep infuriated scowl, before Terminus' voice echoed around the camp. Traitor, legacy of Bacchus, descendant of the giants, Chojiakamichi, you are hereby deemed traitor and enemy of Camp Jupiter. Dionysus bristled at that announcement. One of his legacies was a ninja too. Well, Roman legacy, but he was attacking the camp. What did he say about giants? Percy gasped along with the other demigods. No, they would not court mortals. Zeus waved off. The three girls turned their attention towards the entry, looking up and up and up until they laid their eyes on a portly man standing almost 100 feet tall, wearing red clothes and plated armor on his arms, chest and thighs. He had long spiky brown hair and what looked like red swirls tattooed on his cheeks. A red headband with a metal plate, much like the one on Naruto's belt, was wrapped around his head, a strange marking engraved on it. He opened his mouth and said something in his deep voice that made Talia's eyes widen. You've been gone long enough, Naruto. It's time to come home. You were saying, Hades asked dryly. Zeus rumbled towards his brother. It may be a ninja technique, Athena attested, getting a nod from her father for being supportive. "Suck up," said Poseidon with a smirk at her scowl for his remark. The second Talia and Piper had fled over the bridge, the shinobi had emerged from their hiding place. He faced against them and arched a brow. "This seems like a strange combination. Never thought I'd see you three again. Maybe Kakashi and Yamato, but not you guys. It was a bit of a pain, tracking you down. Yeah, well, good luck getting past the camp barrier." Nico jeered to the stupid mortals. Asses, trying to take his guardian away from him and his sister. The blonde demigod's gaze landed on the man with a tired look on his face, black hair pulled up into a ponytail that made his head look like a pineapple. He was dressed in the traditional attire for the Konohan Jonin, save for the sash around his waist. Naruto nodded at it. "You became one of the 12 guardians. You really are following in his footsteps, aren't you, Shikamaru?" "TCH, only because my mother wouldn't stop nagging and saying how much of an honor it is to be asked," Shikamaru replied, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a cigarette. As he searched for a match, Naruto made a ram seal before he spoke. "Hai no Nagale no Jutsu, fiery stream technique," he said as he inhaled slightly. Presenting his lips like he was going to whistle, a long stream of fire shot from his mouth, dissipating after it lit the edge of Shikamaru's cigarette. "Now that is a bar trick," the Smith god said with a chuckle at the scene. Leo scratched his chin. "Huh, I may need to practice that." The two other shinobi remained tense while the large white dog growled in warning. Naruto rubbed at his throat as he cleared it. Always tastes so nasty coming up." "Yes," said Percy with a deadpan look on his face, "that would taste nasty for anyone," exhaling fire. "Dude," Leo said, "the pyrokinetic with fire immunity." "Sorry, so you can use fire techniques," Shikamaru mumbled, reaching up and removing his cigarette from his mouth. "Because someone took his wind affinity," Zeus grumbled with a frown, though one could mistake it as a pout. Hades just chuckled. Getting one over his brother always brightened his day. "Not really a secret for a native of Fire Country," Naruto replied, his eyes narrowing. "You speak English rather well. How long have you been studying it?" "They must have since that silver-haired ninja could barely speak it last time," Athena said, mildly impressed they could speak it so well now. Shikamaru nonchalantly took another drag before he answered, "Ever since Team Kakashi came back, without you." I think they were crying for the blondie," Ares snickered. "Sucks when you suck, doesn't it?" "Ooh," the demigods said, smiles on their faces. "Enough of this bullshit," exclaimed the wild-looking man wearing a fur-lined leather jacket. A headband with the insignia that adorned Shikamaru's held his own wild brown hair back, and his bright red fang-like markings seemed faded slightly. Next to him was a large white dog, nearing the size of a horse. The man snarled and clenched his hands. "We outnumber you 4-1, dumbass. Just give it up already." "Ha!" Apollo mock laughed, like they could even take him on. He jeered at them, clearly showing his dislike for the ninjas. Canines were bared by the man's large dog before it spoke. "Come with us, or we will make you, Namikaze." "Hey cool, a talking dog," Talia said in intrigue. "That's new," Naruto muttered with a frown before he leaned towards Akamaru and asked, "Since when can you speak?" "I've always been able to talk, Namikaze, you've just never heard me until now," barked the giant white dog. "Well, it's not like he's been around you, ya fleabag," Hermes said with a roll of his eyes. Guess you weren't trying hard enough," the blonde mused. He turned his gaze to the feral man and smirked, itching for a rematch, kibble breath. Snorts and snickers were heard. "Nice, the guy did kinda look like a dog. Perfect name. I'll pound you so hard into the dirt your ancestors will feel it, Naruto," the man snarled. Said ancestors bristled at the arrogance of the mortal, glaring at the feral young man. "I hope he breaks his legs," said Apollo with pursed lips. Before pointing at the blonde, "If you don't come with us peacefully, we've been ordered to bring you in by force." Even if out of shape," Percy said, "I doubt they even could." "Even with Gigantor," Leo added. "Wow, that's never been said to me before, Kiba," Naruto sarcastically replied. "I mean, if Kakashi no Sharingan couldn't take me in, what makes you think you can? Oh, so this is just a small-time chump. Ares frowned. That didn't sound exciting at all. Kakashi wasn't going all out. Kiba snapped back, flexing his clawed hands and growling, I don't have that handicap. Yes, just your mental delusions. The god of madness stated with a roll of his eyes, stupid mortals. A rabid dog on a leash, Naruto muttered with narrowed eyes before he turned his gaze to the quiet one, Et tu, Choji. Orders are orders, Naruto, shrugged the large man. As soon as he spoke, Terminus shifted his gaze to him, making the three shinobi and dog blink in surprise. I know, I freaked out, too, Leo admitted, remembering seeing the moving statue for the first time. 2. Uva puerum. He's NMS2. You, grape boy, who are you? Asked the head as he stared intently at the man. Well, he's got D's beer belly, that's for sure. Ares grinned, getting snickers from the gods besides the currently purple-faced wine god. Choji faltered in his words before he replied to the statue, Akamaiki Choji, Jonin of Konohagakure no Sato. How did you do that, Naruto? What did it just say? Kiba asked while Akamaru whimpered as an instinctual fight or flight instinct was activated. Listen to the animal mortals, it'll save you the trouble, Artemis said with a shake of her head. I think it was another language, Shikamaru mumbled as his eyes narrowed in thought. His gaze went to the surprised look on his one-time friend's face. Naruto stared at Choji before he broke into a fox-like grin. Wow, so there are more. Well, of course it would be possible for him to not be the only demigod ninja, Director Legacy, Athena stated. She mildly wondered what other gods have ninja descendants. How did you do that, Naruto? Choji demanded. How did you make it talk? Hey, he whines like D, too, Hermes snickered, getting a throaty growl from Dionysus. Oh, I didn't do anything, the blonde replied as he grinned. Didn't your mother call you a grape when you were a kid? How do you know that? You were young and angry. You didn't always seem red. No, you seemed a deeper shade sometimes, mused the blonde with a grin on his face as his hand cupped his chin, purple almost. Just like his ancestor when he was a demigod, Hestia said in a small smile to the demigod-turned-god. Mr. D grumbled, obviously not being able to get mad at his aunt, for good reason. Yeah, so, it's a condition that comes from my father's line, Choji said with a frown, so what? Oh, they never knew, Naruto said with his eyes widening, all this time and he's never even thought about it. He's got us in a genjutsu, Shikamaru interjected, breaking Naruto's train of thought. The three shinobi put their hands in the ram seal and exclaimed at the same time, Kai, release. There was an audible static in noise before the alarm became noticeable, Kiba and Akamaru covering their ears crying out in pain as the sudden noise overwhelmed their senses. Snuffing out the canine-like and Kanine's ears with an illusion until they realize and blaring the alarm onto them, taking them out of the battle. Athena said with an impressed look. She sighed, if only he was hers, then she could openly praise his ability and not have to listen to Apollo's gloating. Choji and Shikamaru scowled, the thinner man's hands forming the rat seal. His shadow extended before stopping halfway. Oh, that mortal did not just try to use my domain, Hades hissed lowly. Pineapple head messed up, said Nico, shaking his head in disapproval. Naruto's eyebrows rising in surprise. Ooh, shouldn't have done that, Naruto said as he crossed his arms. Looking down at the ground, Naruto sucked in air between his teeth. Oh, yeah, the Nara clan is officially on his shit list, and so am I. I probably should have told him about you. There is an entire clan of those ninja using shadows, Hades asked, both pissed and a bit intrigued on how they use it. What did you do? Shikamaru asked, forming the ram seal and trying again only for the same result to occur. This time, however, the shadow was shorter in length. I'd stop if I were you, Naruto warned, he's not big on sharing his domain, it's big enough as it is. Hades bemoaned, a pale hand on his face, don't even get me started. Please, don't, Poseidon pleaded with a pained look on his face. Honestly, if he had to hear it one more time. Shikamaru lowered his hands and took another drag on his cigarette in thought. Someone Someone else is controlling the shadows here, right? Naruto smiled secretively. Oh yeah. Really liking my other's employee. I swear I could use a few interns. Hades said, looking at the demigods expectantly. No one offered. So you've successfully taken me and Kiba out of the situation until I think of something and he adjusts to the sound, replied the Jonin with a frown. He turned to his friend and said, Choji. Do it. You have one last chance, Naruto. Come with us willingly, Choji said with frown. Naruto scoffed and subtly reached behind him into his pocket, pulling out his book of seals, while he replied, You'll have to force me. Fine. The large man snapped before his hands blurred through seals. Chobaika no Jutsu, super multi-size technique. See, ninja technique. Athena nodded, getting a pleased look from her father. Suck up, Dionysus muttered, taking a sip of his Diet Coke. Poseidon grinned at that. Shikamaru, Kiba and Akamaru all leapt away and out of sight as Choji started to grow. First by a foot, then 2 and then jumping up to 20 feet high. Yet, he still continued to grow. Finally, Naruto stumbled backwards as the super-sized 100-foot-tall Choji took a step forward, his book of seals flying out of his hand and landing near Terminus. The blonde fell to his back with a grunt, glaring at the sky as he thought, someone is out to get me, and I have a good idea who she is. Damn, Apollo whistled out, seriously, Nemesis is really going hard for him. That's what she said, Ares snickered, getting some snorts from the less mature gods and disgusted looks from goddesses. Giant, Terminus exclaimed in surprise. Yeah he is, Naruto said, as he got up. Fantastic, he's managed to master his clan's signature technique. And on top of that he's a legacy of Bacchus. How do you know? Terminus demanded. I'm very good at what I do. Naruto snapped. Finding demigods, that is, Hermes said, seriously, it's like he has a sonar for them. Before looking back up at Choji and mumbling, I'm gonna need help, Helios, Helios. While Naruto tried to contact his past life, Terminus scowled as he glared up at Choji before he linked up with the rest of his statues scattered throughout the camp and exclaimed furiously. Traitor, legacy of Bacchus, descendant of the giants, Chojiakamichi, you are hereby deemed traitor and enemy of Camp Jupiter. Boo, Ares cheered, bad traitor great boy. The wine god sent him this distasteful look for the comment. Ignoring the statue, Choji frowned, you've been gone long enough, Naruto. It's time to come home. Naruto grinned widely at that proclamation and looked at the giant shinobi. Hey guess what, Choji? You are officially the fattest thing on the planet. True. He is bigger than the giants, Jason said with a frown. Well, Nico started, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, the rest of the 7 answered with big grins. What did you just say to me? The giant bellowed, his face scrunching up in anger and turning a dark shade of red. It looks more maroon to be honest, Demeter said honestly. The god of madness huffed at that. Still, it stung his Roman side to have a legacy trying to attack the camp. You are fat, Naruto shouted. Choji's eyes turned red and his hand lifted up. I'm going to enjoy this, Naruto. The giant exclaimed with a purpling face. Oh yeah, just like D when he was young. Well, he is still like that, Apollo said, getting a maddening glare from Dionysus. Good. Get angry and fight me like the fat, stupid idiot you are. Naruto exclaimed as he burst into golden flames. Now, let's light it up. I love that line, I really do, Apollo grinned. Choji's foot lifted up and Naruto braced himself. As the giant foot came down, the golden demigod's hands went up. Terminus' eyes widened and he faltered before murmuring out, that's impossible. Hey, he must be surprised to see something like Naruto, Percy smirked, getting nods from his friends. The descending sandaled foot of the giant shinobi rushed downwards, encasing Naruto and the statue of Terminus in shadow. The glowing teen's hands pressed against the sole of the giant's foot, creating a shockwave that caused nearby trees to fall. Naruto grunted as he was slowly brought to his knees. Fighting a titan was one thing, holding the weight of a giant was a whole different ballgame. Very true, Zeus said, eyes narrowed at the picture, mild intrigue in them. Clenching his jaw, The heir of Helios fell to one knee, fighting against the weight of his one-time friend. He closed his eyes as he held up the foot. Did I miss something? A grin crossed the face of the reincarnated god when Helios' voice popped up. Just took a brief nap. Zeus girl does a fantastic job of telling stories, you know. See, I do it better. Talia grinned towards the boyfriend of her other's father. No, he said you do good, not better, sweetheart. Apollo retorted. Do not call my hunters sweetheart, Apollo. Artemis glared at her twin, who just shrugged in response. Where's that spirit animal of yours? He's got another job at the moment. Man, it's great to hear your voice, Naruto said in exertion as he dropped to a crouch, ready to go all out. It's Helios, Hestia sniffed. He is always up to cause some form of trouble. Do you love ramen? Let's kick some giant ass. The former god of the sun said in excitement. See, Hestia frowned, like some little delinquent. Naruto's golden eyes narrowed, the blue sun-like pupils shining radiantly along with the markings across his body as he released a roar and pushed up. Choji grunted and wobbled on his feet as Naruto slowly stood. He's going topple the giant, isn't he? Percy asked in low awe. Yep, damn. From where they were hiding, Shikamaru and Kiba were in awe while Akamaru had covered his head and began whimpering. That shouldn't be happening, Kiba whispered in worry. That's impossible. Not even Tsunade-sama can hold off an Akamaiki at full height. Isn't that the big busty lady? Apollo asked as he thought back to where he first heard that name, getting whapped on the back of the head for his description. Yes, Artemis said tersely, a frown marring her young face. Kakashi's reports weren't wrong, Shikamaru murmured. I think we might have bitten off more than we can chew. Well, duh, the demigod said in a drawl, matching Mr. D perfect, just before he could say it. The wine god pouted with crossed arms. You think? Kiba hissed before looking back at the golden figure that was toppling the giant. And that is why we call you stupid mortals, cause you're stupid. Dionysus said in a slow tone, mocking the ninja. Fifth cohort. Terminus bust within the barracks of the fifth cohort. A good number of soldiers of all shapes and sizes stood at attention before a young man wearing the same armor as Reina stepped forward. Leo started to whistle the Superman-themed song, getting everyone else but Jason to tag along. Stop it, he said to them with a slight frown, but they continued, getting the blonde Superman to blush in embarrassment a little. The exiled one has returned, and he is using the power of the gods. He faces a giant. Wait, it's toppled. He's tossed the giant with his bare hands. And start the count. Ares cheered out like a referee. The ground shook and the cohort started to murmur before the golden-armored Roman spoke. Who is he? This exiled one. Give us his name. And so he speaks. Hazel praised with her arms in the air jokingly, getting laughs all around. You of all know him best, Praetor, the Roman god said to the team. You tried to defend him from your father's wrath. Eyes turned to Zeus, but the king of the gods waved them off. He means my other side, surely. The Praetor's eyes widened and he abruptly turned before ordering, clear the way. The cohort made a wide path, allowing the Praetor to clench his fists at his side. Wind built up in the barrack before the Praetor shot out at the speed of a bullet. He leaps tall buildings in a single bound, Leo said in an old radio voice. His helmet was left behind, allowing the handsome face of a young man to be seen by the world had it been watching. Or us, Annabeth said. And such a handsome face it is, Piper said as she smiled at Jason, snuggling closer to him as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Talia, Piper and Reina were running back towards the battlefield when something shot by them. Reina furrowed her brow, murmuring to herself in confusion, what's gotten you all worked up, Jason? Oh, here it comes. Talia said with a frown on her face. What did you just say? Talia asked, looking at the dark-haired girl. My fellow Praetor, Jason Grace, Reina said, making Talia's eyes widen as she stared at the girl, son of Jupiter. Well, that was a nice way to drop the bomb, Apollo said as he rubbed of his chin. Please, Aphrodite waved off with a frown. It would have been far better if Naruto had told her himself. This will just cause minor confusion and shock until she sees Naruto now. Choji reared his hand back and brought it down, only for Naruto to catch it with ease. The golden boy adjusted his grip on the giant's pinky and pushed the hand down into the ground. Jumping up onto the hand, Naruto ran forward, jumping once again as the other hand tried to clap down on him. He climbed up the arm and onto the giant's shoulder, pulling his left fist back and driving it into the right cheek of his old childhood friend. Choji's head snapped to the side with a thunderous boom and his body followed. Keep the pimp hand strong. Ares grinned with his scarred visage, getting frowns from the goddess and demigoddesses. He just decked out a giant, Leo said with disbelief. We saw that, said the others, in just as much disbelief as the fire boy. Naruto landed on the ground next to his old friend's body, looking at Choji's dazed face almost apologetically. Of all the people who he didn't want to fight, Choji was among the top of the list. Innocent, sweet, powerful Choji with only one weakness that he exploited, his anger. Yes, it is very sad having to fight a friend. Hestia frowned. Oh, the poor boy. Choji's rage was legendary. Hell, the man's family's rage was almost as legendary as his grandfather's. Well, they do get it from him, Hades said, Poseidon nodding in agreement as their little brother snarled at the two. His thoughts were broken by a whistling sound. Turning to face the new arrival, Naruto raised a hand to shield his face from the debris that shot up when a person landed in an earth-splitting skid. Lowering his hand, Naruto narrowed his eyes at the dust before he grinned widely when he could see through it. So we do know each other, Jason muttered. I wonder how well, Piper added curiously. Well, look who's decided to grace me with his presence, joked the golden teen. Leo cupped his mouth. Boo. Stepping out of the dust stood a teen just a few inches shy of his height, broad-shouldered and dressed in golden armor with a purple cape falling from his shoulders. His face was handsome and his features very similar to Naruto's own. Golden blonde hair covered his head and electric blue eyes twinkled slightly in the light. It was a face that Naruto could never forget, not even if he tried. Lying jerk off. Talia grumbled. Yes, she was upset about this and hoped her other let him have it. It was the face of his girlfriend's deceased little brother, Jason Grace. I've never heard that one before, Jason said. Seriously, I haven't, Jason said with an innocent smile, but his chuckling betrayed everything about that line. Before smiling widely, you've certainly gotten shinier since we last met. A Jason telling jokes, Leo asked in horror. Say it's not so. The boy in question frowned. I have a sense of humor. It could be a tiny bit better, Piper told him, but I like the serious you, too. Her boyfriend smiled at her for the comment. Do you like it? Inquired the teen as he struck a pose. I've been thinking of getting a dimmer installed. You know, for those days when it's not too dark. If only Apollo came with one, Artemis huffed, getting a pout from her sunny brother. It suits you, Jason replied with a smirk, getting a fox-like grin from the older teen as he relaxed. He then looked at the large form groaning behind the glowing teen. So, tossing giants becoming a regular thing for you. Ah, the causal speak on the battlefield, I miss those days, Ares sighed sadly. There just weren't enough op people left to do that. Well, there was some but he wouldn't admit them to being op. Well, not all the time, Naruto said, leaning back against the giant stomach of his old friend, just today. There's that Apollo modesty, Hera said dryly. Jason hummed at his words, still looking at the giant before he looked at the glowing teen. The power he radiated, it had his senses screaming at him to avoid conflict with the man before him. It was like facing a god. Suicide unless you were immortal, but even then, there was no guarantee you'd survive. Seems you're others smart enough to know you're not the biggest fish in the pond now, Leo smirked at his friend. Jason frowned, which could almost be called a pout. Move, cried the glowing teen as he shoved the younger blonde out of the way from a descending hand. Choji grunted as he missed his opportunity at squishing the smaller warriors. Piper glowered at that. How dare that fat ass try to flatten her soon-to-be, hopefully, other's boyfriend. Rolling to his other side and getting back to his feet. Naruto and Jason rolled out of their evasive maneuver, Jason's face becoming stern and serious while Naruto whistled as he stood. Wow. That's impressive. Even Atlas needed a millisecond to recover from my left hook. You've fought Atlas? Jason asked as he pulled out a gold coin and flipped it into the air, catching it as it descended. A golden spear appeared in his hand and Jason narrowed his eyes at the giant that was trying to relocate them. I missed that coin, Jason sighed out, but he lost it for a good cause. Diana was in trouble. I was on a quest, I'll tell you about it later, he replied. Listen, this guy isn't the same as normal giants. I need your help on this, because we're not trying to kill him. Boo. The war god frowned, crossing his massive arms. Not kill him. He's a friggin' giant, Jason hissed. So quick for blood. Ares grinned at his Roman half-brother. I most likely thought he was just some giant that was also a legacy, Jason frowned. Terminus said as such, so how was I supposed to know he was some ninja? Naruto's gaze snapped to him and Jason reluctantly cowed. Wow, he's got your number. Talia said, impressed by how much influence her other's boyfriend had on Jason. He didn't seem the type to back off from much. It was in his blood after all. Yes, not kill him. He's going to be a message. True, leave an enemy alive to tell the tale. Excellent psychological warfare, Athena nodded, getting Ares to begrudgingly nod too. Message to who? Asked the son of Jupiter. Naruto didn't reply, prompting Jason to take a deep breath before looking at the giant. The younger blonde looked to the golden team. What do we do if we're not going to kill it? It's been a while since we've fought together, Jay, Naruto said as he turned to the younger demigod. Remember our wombo combo? The demigods broke out into snickers as Jason blinked in surprise at the stupid name of a combination. How do you forget something that's stupidly named? Jason asked his fellow blonde. Naruto whacked his 2 fingers against the teen's head. The demigods broke out into laughter. Well, Jason didn't. Blasphemy. It was genius then and genius now. Naruto admonished, looking at the standing giant shinobi. On my mark. How is this not going to kill him? Jason asked. True, a wombo combo is a 0 to death move. Leo stated knowing, man he loved the Smash Brothers video. It won't, so just shut up and wait for my signal. Naruto said before vanishing in a flash of light. Wow, he told you huh? Percy asked in surprise to his Roman friend. Jason just olishly nodded. Man, how did he and Naruto met up? He reappeared on Choji's shoulder, whistling sharply to get the massive shinobi's attention. Found you, Choji said as he started to reach for the blonde. Can't touch me, Naruto said, raising his left hand, solar flare. Take a seat and be blinded by his brilliance. Apollo cried out in a majestic voice, arms wide apart. Choji cried out in pain as Naruto's hand brightened to a blinding light, his eyes getting the full brunt of it. As Choji flailed around in blindness, Naruto vanished once more, teleporting to Jason's side. Give me some wind, Thunder Boy. Naruto ordered as he raised his hands in front him and started to whip his hands through several hand seals. Jason pointed his spear up, gathering dark clouds overhead. The wind gathered around his spear until it looked like a small tornado. Oh, this seems like it is going to hurt, Hazel said, preparing a wince. Naruto. Choji roared, rubbing at his eyes. You have to come home, Naruto. No, he doesn't. The sun god frowned to the fat ninja. Not today, Naruto replied as he built chakra in his lungs and converted it with his natural affinity. Rearing his head back as he inhaled, Naruto cried out, now Jason. Kaden. Genkyu fire release. Great blaze ball. We can do a fire wind combo. Leo cried out and swiveled his head to Jason. We are so doing that. Let's see what it does first. Leo, the Thunder Boy smirked, turning back to eagerly see this combo at work. Jason swung his spear just as Naruto's head flew forward, firing a giant ball of fire. The wind added speed and size to the attack until it was about 10 feet in diameter. That's a big ball of fire, the mechanic boy whistled. The technique hit the giant shinobi, sending him flying over the city like Camp Jupiter. Verdict. Leo asked. Wait for it, Choji screamed as he flew, his armor burning away and his body slowly but forcibly shrinking as his chakra tried to defend the host. The impact, almost a mile away near the fields of Mars, made a large dome of fire. Yeah, we are so doing that, Jason answered, getting Leo to pump his fist in the air. Wombo combo it is then. The son of lightning turned to the Latino, no way. We'll think up another name. Oh you wish, Wombo combo forever. Naruto waited until the dome faded, and then he turned around, narrowing his eyes at the shadow user that was glaring at him. Hey, someone's pissy about losing a squad member, Ares jeered happily. Well, he was the heavy hitter, so it is completely understandable, Athena told him. Jason spun around and brandished his spear, getting ready to attack but was stayed by Naruto's extended hand. The golden teen crossed his arms over his chest before he spoke, now what? I've just roasted your best friend. You can't access your clan's techniques and right now both Akamaru and Kiba are shaking in fear as their instincts tell them to run. You want to know why? Tell us, Percy asked, having a good feeling what the son of the sun would say. The son of Konoha's Jonin commander's cheek twitched, but he remained silent. Ooh, a commander's kid, hey, must be ticked off at getting bested so easily. Hermes smirked. Oh, without a doubt. Apollo nodded. Family lineage in the army always sucked since he had to live up to past standards. Naruto grinned as he answered, I'm just that awesome. Why won't you come home? Shikamaru gritted out, first Sasuke, now you. Why? Naruto said nothing, merely powering down before stepping forward, his eyes narrowed. His hands gripped Shikamaru's Jonin flak jacket and lifted the man up. Blue orbs with small suns looked into two coal-colored eyes before Naruto bared his clenched teeth and said, I am nothing like Sasuke. Hell yeah, forget that ass. Apollo frowned, his kid was no backstabbing traitor. Then come home. Shikamaru grunted back. The blonde continued to glare at him, before pulling him down and whispering in his ear. Naruto whispered something to him that made Shikamaru's eyes widen before lifting him back up. Aw man, what did he say? Frank asked in a frown at not knowing. Naruto then said, now tell me what you really want to know. The strategist and team leader swallowed before asking what was on his mind. Why can't I outsmart you? Humph. Seems the boy's ego is stung from being bested by your son, Athena stated to her archer brother. Well, planning does run in the family, he told her, getting a smirk from his wise sister. You can, Naruto replied with a smirk before nodding behind him, you just can't outmaneuver them. And show us the them. Hazel smiled widely at the picture. Shikamaru looked over his oddly younger friend's head to see a bunch of teens of all ages standing behind the blonde wearing golden armor, each of them pointing various sharp weapons in their direction. Fifth cohort for the win. The praetor smiled. Damn right. Percy grinned along with the blonde Roman. Naruto spoke again, earning Shikamaru's attention. You see, for all your brains, for all your foresight, you just can't outsmart a battalion of Romans. Wanna know why? No, tell us, Jason asked with crossed arms and a wide grin on his face. Not giving the teen a chance to answer, Naruto continued, they've got the best damn army on the planet. That got wild cheers from the Roman children. Athena on the other hand scoffed. Well, Solace was worried. He had one job and he'd screwed it up. He what? Nico cried out in anger while Hades simmered. Hey, Apollo said to the two, stop that. If that son of yours messed up, Apollo. Calm yourself, Hades, Athena said diplomatically, let us at least hear the boy out. Hades' scowl became, if possible, more prominent. Fine. Not only was it a job, but one of the big three, the scariest one in his opinion. Good. Had given him a show of faith, a blessing to enter and leave the 13th cabin at his leisure. Though with how odd Bianca's illness became, he hardly had the time to keep an eye on Nico. See, it was Nico's fault, Percy said with a smirk, making the boy's pale face to flush a little. Shut up. You're sure you haven't seen him, Chiron? Will asked, almost pleadingly, as he nervously stood at the entrance of Hades' cabin. The centaur sighed and ran a hand down his face. Hazel turned to her brother. What did you do? She asked. You're giving the boy a heart attack. Not fault. Blame my other, Nico sniffed. Well, calm yourself. Whatever has happened to Nico is out of your control, and Lord Hades can't harm you while Bianca's still in need of a caretaker, Chiron said to the teenager. Hades crossed his arms. Indeed, he said, idly glancing at his son out the corner of his eye, thus getting the boy to squirm a bit. Go do what you've been assigned. I will focus on this matter and search for young Nico if it puts you at ease. Good old Chiron. Percy smiled, he loved that horse man. Will sighed and nodded, turning away and slowly closing the cabin door. Thanks, Chiron. The blonde teen groaned and put a hand over his face, sighing heavily before he went back to Bianca's room. Ranger's head lifted as he pushed the door open and went to his designated pale patient, lifting her arm and checking her for a faint pulse. Will shook his head and murmured, figures. While he tried to get more fluids in Bianca's veins, Will worried what his eldest brother would do to him when he found out that he had lost the younger charge. Well, probably a prank since that is what the boy is known for, said Hermes with an impish grin. I'd rather it be a bit more vicious than that, Hades muttered, making Apollo glare at him. While Will Solace was worrying about both Bianca's strange illness and Nico's absence and Naruto Uzumaki was fighting a giant, Annabeth Chase was leading her quest once again through the labyrinth. They had just left Alcatraz, failing to convince a hundred-handed one to accompany them after slaying his torturer, the horrifying camp, and prompting Annabeth to think about their conversation with Hera. This should be fun, Annabeth said with a frown on her face, wondering how different this conversation was going to be with her least favorite goddess. So why are you here again? Percy asked as he, Annabeth, Grover and Tyson sat with the Queen of Olympus passing out a lunch at the table once covered with dust after the teen's stomach rumbled. How kind of me, Hera said with a smile, getting eye rolls from her siblings and children. Percy, 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 Hera tisked as she gave Grover a bowl of salad, I'm here to help you. But how? Annabeth cried. How can you be here? I thought the gods couldn't interfere on a quest. Oh, what do you call what Apollo did over the winter? The Queen of Olympus scoffed. Apollo trailed off, not knowing how to answer. Divine intervention. He got a positive nod from his sister. If you must know, every century for one quest one care deeply about, my husband will let me grant one wish. But why help us? Continued the daughter of Athena, I thought you hated heroes. She does, thought most of the demigods who have met the woman. You have one spat with one demigod and it follows you forever, I swear, Hera sighed. I know, the Queen of Heaven said with a nod to her other. Her husband said nothing, but he did have a small frown upon his visage. Before looking at Grover, stop chewing on that napkin, dear. It's not good for you. Yes ma'am, the satyr said, spitting the bits in his mouth out. But didn't you try to kill him? Annabeth asked. Like, a lot of times. Very true, Hades said, unaffected by his sister's dark glare. He rolled his dark eyes. Oh please stop denying it already. Water under the bridge, Hera dismissed, and besides, I happen to be fond of many heroes, Jason for instance. Which one? Leo asked, getting Jason to send him a mild glare. The blonde remembering his forced entitlement of being the Roman Queen of Heaven's champion. The Argonaut right? Percy asked. The Queen gave him a small smile. Yes, Hera confirmed before passing him another sandwich, there's another who's earned my attention though. Your friend, Naruto. What? Said everyone in surprise, even the gods. At their stunned stares, save for Tyson who was enjoying the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the goddess continued, you all seem so surprised by that. He's the son of a god, yes, but a child of matrimony. A sire of a proper relationship between god and mortal. Of course, said Apollo dryly, now it made sense. Naruto was technically, in Hera's opinion, a perfectly made demigod. Good thing his other married, huh? Wait a second, Annabeth interjected, Naruto's dad, Apollo, he married someone. Apollo. I know, we're all shocked about it, Artemis said with crossed arms and an amused look on her face. Hey, I was in just as much disbelief as you were when I heard that, Hera said, 8 years ago, Apollo waking up from a prophetic trance with a loud exuberant cry. I had thought he found a new challenge. And by challenge, I meant a woman, said Hera, a disapproving look on her face. Imagine my surprise when he returned that evening with a tale of his new son, 15 years old, saving a city from a delusional gravity manipulating mortal. He did what? Percy asked. Seems hard of hearing runs in the family. Athena quipped to her rival. The sea god frowned at her for the remark. Grover snorted and stuck a piece of lettuce in his mouth. Figures. Leaving the best part out of a story, that screams Naruto. No, it screams good storytelling. Apollo said. You don't shoot off the best stuff in the first telling. Yes, and his name was so strange, Hera commented thoughtfully. It was strange enough to earn many of the gods' attention, my own included. I watched him as he learned about the new world he was brought to, how quickly he adapted to the strange machines and tools used by mortals today, but then there was one significant moment that really grabbed my attention. Oh, this should be good, Hephaestus mumbled, looking slightly interested as well. What happened? Tyson asked curiously as he wiped his hands on a napkin. Like the others gathered around the table, he was sucked into the story, curious about the kind blonde that gave him challenges in the forge. Seems he gets along with Tyson well enough, Annabeth said to her beau, making him grumble. Seriously, the blonde just got along with everyone so easily, it made him a little jealous. He found a girl on her own in California, Hera said while looking at a surprised Annabeth. Annabeth looked surprised as well. What did she have to do with Naruto impressing the Queen of Heaven? A daughter of Athena, in fact. A young girl he treated like a sister, who he cared for and protected. The compassion, the care, the familial bond. It warmed my heart to see a hero like that. Even Hestia showed more interest in him than any hero that had come before. The two sisters turned to one another in mild intrigue. True, something like that would gander their attention. Then why are you helping me instead of him? Annabeth asked with a frown. You were his first anchor. You were the first demigod he had met, and in some way, shape or form, you were family, the first family he could be with here. You gave him a reason to stay and not try to return to the hidden lands. Hera smiled as she looked at the girl. Annabeth's eyes widened at that revelation. Eyes turned to her, causing the blonde girl to duck a little with a flustered look on her face. And with that reason, he had become what he is today, one of the greatest heroes of this time. All because of one young girl and the bond they made. Wow, go Annie, Talia said, whistling with a bit of an impressed look on her face. Annabeth turned to her friend and gave her a baleful glare. Percy grimaced for his other. It was going to be tough for him if the other Annabeth held Naruto on such a pedestal. Why am I helping you, Annabeth Chase? The queen continued, not because I prefer you over him, or he doesn't need it, because Naruto would need all the help in the world for his quest. No, I am helping you because he would want me to. Choosing another over himself, said Hestia after reading that passage. She smiled lightly. I like this boy. The group sat once again in stunned silence, the sandwich in Tyson's hand falling to his plate from his lax grip due to awe. Percy sat noticeably straighter, his green eyes twinkling in thought. No doubt jealous out of his mind right now, Talia said, getting a disgruntled look from Percy and a blushing Annabeth. What those thoughts were, Annabeth didn't know, but she knew that for all she wanted to refute Hera's reason to help, she couldn't. Naruto would choose her safety over his any day of the week, month, or year. That's really sweet of him, Hazel said with a smile, Annabeth nodding in agreement. Annabeth's nod made Percy pout. The blonde rolled her stormy eyes, snuggling into his side. Relax, seaweed brain, she giggled, getting the boy to smile at her. Okay, it was his fault, his fatal flaw, he was too selfless. He'd gladly give his life if it meant the safety of others would be assured, putting the world on his shoulders and never asking anyone else to do the same. That set a solemn mood in the chamber. A truly self-destructing fault, Athena mused. Wow, Percy muttered, and Athena had told him his fault was bad. Naruto's seemed to just be so life-ending, especially for a demigod as powerful as him. Oh, but he could be so much better, Hera sighed, breaking Annabeth's thoughts. I don't like where this is going, said a grimacing Talia. Hera begged to differ that if the smile on her face was anything to go by. What do you mean? Percy asked curiously. Naruto Uzumaki, the son of Apollo. Think about it, Hera said with a bit of disappointment. Eventually he'll become far too arrogant, too cocky. Hey, said the sun god, a bit outraged. Am I really wrong? The stepmother asked snidely. Apollo could only simmer at her. Annabeth's head snapped up and she glared at the queen. Naruto isn't like that. Wow. To glare at her just for him. Talia trailed off, getting Percy to look irked at the comment. Not now. No, but perhaps in time, Heir said before scoffing. He's already inherited his father's more often than not poor choice in women. Oh, this is just about Talia, Hermes said dryly, but turned to his brother. You also do kinda get a diamond in the rough every so often. Apollo grumbled with a deep frown on his face and a dim look upon his figure. Hecate would be a better option for him. Perhaps even Tyche. Order knows she's liked the boy since he was young. Wow. The luck goddess. Leo asked. Seriously, which one of the minor goddess don't want to shack up with the blonde? Very true. Hephaestus nodded, impressed. He and Talia deserve to be together. Annabeth argued, her annoyance rising. Here. Aphrodite agreed as both Annabeth and Talia flushed. The hunter turned to her friend. Wow. That was, Annabeth nodded. I know. I said it so readily. It was like Hera was purposely trying her patience by pointing out things that weren't there. The daughter of Athena continued hotly. Both of them were wrongly punished for something out of their control. Talia simmered at that, as she saw Annabeth giving a nod to her other, getting the hunter to smile. Zeus had broken his oath on the Styx, Hera countered with a frown. Hades was more than welcome to enact punishment, especially after what had happened to his children's mother. Hades sent a heated glare to a stony-faced Zeus, Nico just radiating his own fear out of anger of the horrifying day. Then why did he kill Naruto if he wasn't part of that? Questioned the blonde with tears burning at her eyes, restraining herself from screaming out what she really wanted to say. Why did he take my big brother away from me? Annabeth frowned. She had a feeling that maybe their relationship wasn't just an innocent brother-sister thing. And by Percy's frowning face, he had gotten that message as well. She was nearly crying. Crying in front of Percy, Grover, and Tyson was one thing. Crying in front of Hera of all things was definitely out of the question. But it was the one question that had bothered her for so long, haunted her since she was a child. The gray-eyed child could understand that. She felt that when Talia had been turned into a tree, but with both a male and female role model. Well, that seemed to have cut her other deeper. Why her brother? Why did Naruto have to leave? Annabeth clenched tightly onto her jeans to keep her composure, her jaw trembling as Hera stared at her. Naruto made his choice, Annabeth, the queen said, a choice that only one Olympian has come close to ever making. He chose your life over his. Hestia smiled at that. Truly the heir of Helios was one of worth in this age, one you rarely see anymore. Annabeth's hands clenched even tighter while she struggled to keep herself composed. Before she could ask anything else, Hera continued, but enough about Apollo's child, let's get back on track. I am here to help you and to do so I will grant you one wish. Annabeth took a few deep breaths, pushing back her frustration before putting her mind to the quest at hand. What was their current situation? They were trapped in an ever-changing labyrinth to find its creator. However, there was also the possibility of more monsters being found in the labyrinth, so maybe a way to defeat them. A good thought process. Athena nodded to her daughter. Before you make your wish, I have some advice to give you. Hera spoke once more. You seek Daedalus, this labyrinth's creator. Finding Daedalus will not be as easy as stumbling across him by chance. My advice is to go to my son Hephaestus. He'll be more than happy to help you discover what had happened to the inventor. And that was a fun encounter, said the smith god with a grunt. But how do we get there? Annabeth asked before nodding in confirmation. That's what I wish for, a way to navigate the labyrinth. And that is going to go as well as it did before, son of the sea grumbled. Hera gained a look of disappointment as she looked at Annabeth. I see. Unfortunately, you have wished for something you already have. Percy's eyes screwed shut in though. But, if Nico was summoning Theseus' soul in my dream, then how do we know? He asked his girlfriend, who shrugged in turn. Annabeth growled. Something we already have. What was she talking about? Let it go. She was probably just trying to throw you off your game, Percy suggested. Hera bristled at the notion, ungrateful children. Before he walked into a stopped Tyson. Ow. Tyson, what's the hold up? Not alone, the Cyclops mumbled with a shiver, someone watching us. The couple turned to one another. This didn't happen before. Grover stopped and sniffed before he shivered as well. He's right. Someone is watching us. Grover, Ty son. It is I. The Ghost King. A disembodied voice echoed around them, and I have come for your souls. Nico. The Greek demigods deadpanned. Cool, sneaking onto the quest. The Ghost King smiled. Now this just got so much better. As Tyson and Grover became even more unnerved, Percy snickered at the ghostly taunt while Annabeth's brow furrowed. The daughter of Athena muttered, I know that voice. Yeah, I mean, it is so annoying, the blonde mocked playfully to the goth boy, getting Nico to scowl at her. Fier me, the voice continued before it broke into snickers. Wow, so mature, Hazel joked to her brother, getting his pale cheeks to flush. What, I was, 11 at the time. All right, come out Nico, Annabeth said with a frown on her face, you're scaring Tyson. Out of the shadows stepped a familiar olive-skinned 11-year-old. Nico D'Angelo had a smile on his face as he walked up to the group, dark eyes twinkling in the mischievous manner that Naruto often inspired. Well, I can clearly say he's being a wonderful influence on me, said the son of Hades. Or turning you into something worse, Percy teased, getting the boy to scowl and push him in revenge. He wore a plain green shirt and jeans with a chain belt around his waist. Protecting him from the elements was a faded aviator's jacket, and slung over his shoulders was a decently sized sword about 3 feet in length, just shy of touching the ground from the 11-year-old's height. Ain't he cute? Using something almost as big as him, Ares jeered with a snicker, getting the goth boy to scowl deeper. But it did inspire some laughs at the younger Nico. You should have seen the look on your face, sniggered out the boy to the relieved Tyson and the annoyed Grover. Shouldn't you be at camp taking care of Bianca? Grover inquired. Nico's smile fell into a frown. Thanks for the reminder Grover, the Ghost King frowned along with his other. That's why I'm here, Nico retorted. My sister isn't getting better and I'm not going to sit around waiting for her to die while I could do something. Damn straight, Nico said, nodding to his other. Now he had the power to do something, unlike him at the time. Besides, Bianca is in good hands with Will. Maybe more than just good hands, Apollo suggested, getting Hades to turn on him. If that boy does something, so help me, he trailed off when Apollo snickered at him. Ain't like you can touch him, and going after the one in this dimension would be moronic. Hades fumed silently. So you want to join us? Annabeth pieced together, to help your sister. I might find a way to save Bianca, Nico said determinedly, she's my most precious person. Didn't Naruto say that? Jason commented thoughtfully. I believe so, Hestia told her Roman nephew. Strength comes from protecting your precious people, Annabeth quoted with a small smile, getting a grin from the younger boy. Seems Annabeth follows the same policy. Piper noted with a smile. She did like the sound of it though. She hummed before saying, well I guess having another child of the big three would be a great help. True that, Nico smiled smugly. I don't know, Percy uneasily said as he looked to Annabeth, Naruto would kill us if he got hurt. Dia, poor little Nico, Talia said in a baby voice to her younger cousin. Oh go chase a deer, stupid lightning rod. The goth boy grumbled. You mean he might kill you? Annabeth teased getting a mocking laugh from the son of Poseidon. It's true, he seems to care about me a lot, so leaving out Grover and Tyson, yeah, Annabeth nodded to her beau. You would be dead. Thanks, was the dry retort. Grover patted his friend on the shoulder in understanding while Tyson tilted his head in confusion. I can take care of myself, Nico said with a frown. To demonstrate, he turned around and raised his hand in the direction of the labyrinth, closing his eyes and forcing the ground to rise up. Opening his eyes, Nico then made the lifted slab float over to him with a gesture. As the slab stood in front of him, Nico unsheathed his slate-colored blade and slashed through the earth several times. He sheathed his sword and the raised stone crumbled. Okay, he is way better with a sword than I was at that age, Nico whistled. Who taught him that? Geokinesis and swordsmanship, Annabeth summed up, as well as that, invisibility. Shadow walking. Nico corrected as he gave a small smug grin to Percy. Dad taught me. Nico faltered at that. His father taught him. Well, lucky kid, he had to learn things the hard way. When did he? Last winter, Percy concluded before crossing his arms as he scrutinized the younger boy. Well, at least you can swing your sword, but so can I. Can you use it though? Well, someone seems a bit pissy. Nico grinned to his cousin, who in turn blinked at his other. Bianca and I were trained by one of, if not, the best swordswoman in the underworld, the son of Hades said with a challenging gleam in his eye. Really now? Athena said with interest, rendering the attention of the other goddesses as well. Training and surviving are two entirely different things, Percy countered. It's the same thing if you trained like we did, deadpanned the younger D'Angelo. He then shuddered as he remembered a cackling red-headed woman swinging a sword down at him, forcing him to go on the defensive. You really do go for the crazy ones. Artemis deadpanned to her brother. Hey, the crazy ones are usually the best ones, Dionysus countered with a finger pointed to his half-sister. Of course you would say that. That training was not something he wanted to go through again. Who trained you? Grover asked curiously. Naruto's mom, Kushina Uzumaki, Nico replied nonchalantly. You could hear a pin drop after the son of Hades spoke. Annabeth was the first to speak, pouncing after she had recovered from her shock. Leave it to Annabeth to do that, Percy quipped, getting a half-hearted slap to the shoulder. He gave a mock wince in return. You met Naruto's mom, exclaimed the blonde daughter of Athena with a hint of jealousy to her voice. She really wants to know everything about her brother, or is it future mother-in-law? Aphrodite teased the young blonde. Annabeth blushed like a tomato. Okay. Too far, way too far. I don't know, seems to sound like it by the way with this story. Talia. The blonde cried out in embarrassed distress. Percy only crossed his arms, a brooding look on his face at the stupid, in his opinion, suggestions about his girlfriend. After he returned and Annabeth had asked him, Naruto had said he'd met her once but left it at that. Few knew more about his mother. Annabeth only knew his mother's name and what she looked like from a vague description, red-headed and beautiful. Annabeth then got rolling on the questions. What's she like? Why was she in the underworld? Why was she training you? How was she training you? Wow. Interrogation much? Leo asked in surprise. She might be really good at it, Hazel supplied with a surprised look of her own. Wow. You are worse than a journalist, Nico mumbled before he rubbed his arm. Nikki's right on that one, Dionysus said, looking at the blonde, so chatty. Well, yeah, she's my stepmother's handmaiden bodyguard. It was hard not to meet Kushina. Yes, well, it was winter, Hades said, getting a glare from his sister. Oh, get over it. Demeter just huffed, intent on listening to the story. But what is she like? Annabeth pressed. Is she as nice as Naruto said she was? Kushina is the nicest woman I've ever met, Nico answered with a grin. I'll tell you more about her if I can come along. Oh come on, like Annabeth would really, Percy started. Sure, Annabeth agreed, it's not like I'm going to send you back through the labyrinth on your own. It's a miracle you even found us in the first place. Fall for that, he finished, looking like an idiot. His ears turned pink as some laughed at him. You were saying water boy. Oh shut it, corpse breath. Yeah, miracle, Percy repeated quietly as his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Not really, Nico dissuaded the teen's thoughts. I can sort of become the shadows. I see what they see. Different from Naruto's teleporting. How is that different from Naruto's teleporting? Annabeth asked. I thought he just jumped from place to place. Yes, please enlighten us of my amazing skills, said Apollo in a majestic tone. Smugness was saturating the air. Kind of. It's like he can vanish into thin air and in milliseconds reappear where he wants to. Nico struggled to explain. I don't know the technicalities, but he has a further range than Bianca or I do. Even our dad can't move as quickly through the shadows. Now that is interesting, Hades said, as he could move quite fast if he wished. That might be due to old age, though, Percy joked, getting a small bout of laughter from the group. The god snickered while Percy gulped when his uncle turned a sharp gaze upon him. Old, huh? He asked in a chilling tone. Other me. Be lucky it was, boy. Annabeth smiled at Nico and said, all right, let's get a move on then. Bianca won't wait forever and neither will Hephaestus. Hephaestus, huh, Nico mused, never met him. He made Kushina's sword after a request from Persephone. Dad made mine and Bianca's. Huh, nice, the smith god said, rubbing his smoldering beard. He did do some Japanese work, but he wondered what design he went with. Bianca has a sword, Percy asked. No, she throws rocks, kelp brain. Talia said with a roll of her eyes. I throw rocks, Hazel said with narrowed eyes. Sorry. Annabeth rolled her eyes. Seaweed brain, she has to defend herself somehow, and Nico even said that Kushina had trained both of them. Well, excuse me for not being a year-rounder, grumbled the son of Poseidon, how am I supposed to know? Visit more, Annabeth said with a look at her sheepish boyfriend. There's nothing against the occasional visit, Percy, Grover mock chided. See, Grover agrees with me. Annabeth smiled in triumph with crossed arms. Percy rolled his eyes. Yes, yes, bow to the wisdom that is Annabeth Chase. He smirked at her, getting a smile back. How are we supposed to be sure that you're okay? You're a riot. I've been taking lessons, Grover replied proudly. Juniper likes funny guys. Of course he would, laughed Talia, getting snickers from those that knew the supernatural couple. While Percy and Grover, and the unintentionally eavesdropping Tyson, talked about Grover's girlfriend like how they met and how they hooked up, Annabeth grilled Nico for information on Naruto's mother. Geez, back off a little blondie, Nico frowned. Sorry, the child of wisdom apologized for her other. But it was just natural instinct for a member of Cabin 6. Kushina Uzumaki is the nicest woman outside of battle, Nico said as he walked next to the blonde. He shuddered in fear as he continued, training though, you trained with Naruto, right? And my other just became more awesome, the gray-eyed girl gushed with a smirk. Annabeth gave him a sympathetic glance, that bad? No, it's his mother, if anything, Apollo trailed off. Worse, Nico muttered, getting Annabeth to wince. Yeah, that, the sun god said with a wince, poor little death kids. She hadn't known that there was someone more intense than Naruto when it came to training. The son of Hades continued, we were forced to run the length of the Styx twice. She managed to stick bones to our back and sicked Cerberus on us. I am not liking this woman, at all. Nico shuddered a bit. I am, Hades smiled wickedly, finally, some new blood in the business that knew what they were doing. How did you survive? Asked the daughter of Athena. Running. A lot of running, Nico answered. He shook off the memories and said, other than that, Kushina was very nice. A few conversations with Apollo over the phone that Bianca and I overheard aside, I don't think she gets mad that easily. Says a lot about your relationship, doesn't it? Artemis asked her brother, getting the music god to slump in his throne. What were she and Apollo arguing about? Annabeth inquired. Hey, that's private you little runt, said Apollo. I am not a runt. Annabeth grunted out with a frown. I don't think they were arguing, said the boy with a shrug. According to Bianca, she was just accusing him of tainting her precious baby boy, whatever that meant. Like the shameless buffoon he is, Artemis chuckled out, getting snickers all around. PSH, says Little Miss Virgin. Really? Don't talk about things you have no idea about, Apollo said with a scoff directed at her. What was that? The archery goddess asked sharply. You heard me. Oh, I did you. Their father coughed, getting their attention as a stern gaze got them to stop, for now. Really? Annabeth probed as a small smirk crossed her face, what else? She kept warning me to stay away from alcohol and drugs for some reason other than the usual, drugs are bad, stay in school, thing, Nico said. Well, I wonder why he was told that. Percy said sarcastically. Can't let it go, can you seaweed brain? Talia asked, rolling her eyes. Naruto's the drug addict, ex-addict. Yeah, you keep protecting that boyfriend of yours. Keep it up. Jackson, before grinning, there's a really good story she told me about Naruto though. Did you know he once led a revolt? No way, exclaimed the girl with a frown, why wouldn't he tell me that? It is kind of graphic for a kid who already has to deal with monsters chasing them, Nico pointed out. Yeah, Annie, I think us on the run is enough for your young mind, quipped the hunter. I guess, the blonde said, sounding a bit disappointed. Getting a look of surprise from Annabeth. What? Kushina told me about how you two met. I guess Naruto must have told her, Annabeth mumbled. But anyway, Naruto and his team were called out to escort a bridge builder to a small village called Nami, Nico began, enthralling the daughter of Athena with the story. Percy, Tyson and Grover were sucked in as well, silently listening in as the son of Hades spoke. Annabeth interjected a lot, asking questions about details Nico wasn't 100% sure of, such as how two fully grown men hid in a puddle. Ninjas, Apollo said as if it was obvious. Or how a rabbit that was out of its natural habitat retain a snow-white fur. Well, that is just because it was most likely domesticated and separated from its natural environment, Artemis answered. Or even how a blade nearly 6 feet in length that was stopped by a blade 5 inches long. Ninjas, the sun god stated once more. Yeah, perfect logic. The group shared a laugh when Nico retold how Naruto freaked out upon discovering he had been stabbed with a poisonous blade, and then making it worse by impaling his hand with his kunai. It seems he didn't have basic medicine skills in him as of yet. Athena smirked to her brother, getting Apollo to purse his lips at the dumb move. He was just trying to bleed out the poison, the archery god said, trying to cover for his super special awesome kid. As he talked about their tree climbing exercise, the subject of Sasuke came up, making Grover and Percy share a glance before the son of Poseidon interrupted. Who is Sasuke? Sasuke, Nico corrected, was Naruto's best friend, before he went crazy and tried to kill him. Asshole, Apollo said with a frown. Annabeth, Percy and Grover stiffened before looking at one another. Nico continued to walk and talk, Tyson following him while engrossed in the story, leaving the three behind. Grover leaned forward and asked, "You don't think that?" He did say Lucky Boy was almost impaled through the heart by the psychopathic friend, Percy said as he recalled the mockery of a story Naruto had told last winter. Apollo smiled and said, "Ah, continuity." But even with Apollo's blessing, which he didn't even know about until he was 15, Annabeth pointed out. Didn't he have cursed healing with that demon of his? Hermes pointed out. True. Apollo frowned at the mention of his son's furry friend. Naruto couldn't have survived a punctured lung. Not without some serious medical treatment. Q could have helped, Grover suggested. He was a spirit of nature after all, and some spirits are known to be well trained in the arts of healing. Goat Boy is on the right track, but he took a wrong turn at the last intersection, the medicine god said. But Q was a curse before he became a weapon, Percy argued. Smart Percy alert, Nico announced, getting a mocking laugh from said alert. Naruto was one of those Jinchuriki things. Jinchuriki, Grover corrected. What did you say? Annabeth asked as her eyes widened. Grover and Percy looked at each other before back at her as she continued, Jinchuriki. As in, power of human sacrifice. You learned Japanese, Percy said in disbelief to his girlfriend, who gave a blushing smile. It was something she would do. You learned Japanese, didn't you? Grover asked. It's my third language, nodded a proud Annabeth. Of course, deadpanned all her friends. Annabeth pouted and crossed her arms. I can barely handle English and you learned Japanese? Percy asked incredulously. Annabeth rolled her eyes. Japanese to Greek translation books, seaweed brain, replied the blonde as though it were obvious. But it isn't, the son of the sea cried out. Well, if you studied more, it would be. His girlfriend countered, making the boy's shoulders slump. You'd be surprised how easy learning things can be once you translate it to Greek. Shut up, wise girl, Percy mumbled as he looked away, recalling Naruto saying something similar as he forced Percy to study history. Should really listen to the blonde, Percy. Oh, who asked you, matchstick? Anyway, it's an old word long forgotten, how do you two know it? Annabeth asked. Grover and Percy shared another nervous glance, this one noticed by Annabeth and making her gape at them. No. No, he didn't. He told you about his past on the quest for Artemis, didn't he? Someone's upset. Percy frowned. The brains of the couple flushed. Well, if I had a brother like Naruto, I would like to know all about him, too. That just made the brawn of the relationship pout. Yes, no. I mean no, yes. The two friends replied before glaring at each other. Would it kill you for once in your life to work with me? The group snickered. Like some slapstick comedy duo. Piper sniggered. Percy on the other hand mused the idea, it could work. They already had the animal gag with Grover's furry hooves. You two have been together for far too long, Annabeth commented before starting to rant. I can't believe he told you to. I thought he hated you, Percy. Wow, Percy said and glanced at the stormy-eyed girl. Thanks. Sorry. Same here, answered the boy honestly. I think if it weren't for Talia, we'd have never gotten the truth out of him. You're all welcome, said girl bowed with a haughty look. But he told you. Why hasn't he said anything to me yet? Annabeth demanded, feeling slightly hurt. Percy just mockingly hugged her shoulders, rubbing her arm in an effort to comfort her, getting swatted playfully for his actions. The blonde still snuggled under the arm though. Maybe there's a reason he hasn't told you yet. Grover quickly defended the blonde. Maybe he thinks by keeping you in the dark he's keeping you safe. It sounds like him, Percy admitted, thinking back to what Apollo said to him on the train. I mean, he picked on me to get me to wake up and take things seriously. A miracle in and out of itself, Athena said, getting a dirty look from Poseidon, but it did little to dissuade her agreement. Which you still haven't done, Grover added. And burned by Grover, ouch, snickered the lightning girl. Who's the demigod again? Percy playfully threatened. Last I checked you were, and yet I still managed to make you walk into a tree, retorted the satyr with a smug grin. Lousy goat, the tree walker mumbled with crossed arms. Touché, Percy stated before putting a hand on the lightly smiling Annabeth's shoulder and said, listen, Naruto has the most messed up logic on the planet. And that's something, coming from Percy, that is really uncalled for, you dear poop tracker. Oh, go soak your head, fish boy. Children, Hestia told her niece and nephew in a stern tone, getting them to shut up. You of all people should know that by now. Whatever his reason for not telling you, it's most likely for your benefit. You really think so? Annabeth asked. Yep. Percy lied slightly. Lying to her already. Tisk, tisk, Athena frowned and Percy winced. Really uncalled for. He wasn't really sure about that, though, because there was still a very slim possibility that Naruto just forgot to bring his little sisses up to speed. For now, he'll just try to keep Annabeth's mind on the quest and keep her from feeling too low or doubting herself. Very sweet of him, right? She asked her boyfriend, giving him a peck on the cheek, getting a silly smile from the raven-haired boy. Thanks, Percy, the daughter of Athena said with that same smile that made Percy's heart skip a beat. The dark-haired teen just smiled back, content with making his crush feel better. Hey, are you guys coming or what? Nico called from a rather impressive distance ahead. The three older quest takers quickly rejoined the two younger ones, Nico giving them odd looks upon their arrival. What were you guys talking about? Plot relevance, Annabeth suggested, getting nods from her mother and Apollo. Nothing important, Annabeth replied. What did we miss? Team made it to wave. Naruto met Haku, Tyson summed up with a smile. Go on, Nico. Tell more. Seems you spin a good tale, Hazel complimented her brother. The boy shrugged. I try, he said with an impish smile. Yeah, Nico waved off the excited Cyclops, urging. Apparently Naruto was out all the next night training, oversleeping and missing his team leave for the bridge. Your child, oversleeping? The huntress asked in apparent amusement, moon-like eyes twinkling. So, just because they have an internal clock doesn't mean they can't hit the snooze button. Apollo argued with a shrug, although it felt kind of weak. He was gone just long enough to hear his host Tsunami, the bridge builder's daughter, release a threatening yell to bite her own tongue off after he stumbled across a cut-up boar. Is that possible? Percy asked. Annabeth shuddered before nodding, prompting the others to groan in disgust at the mental image. Not only possible, but life-threatening, Nico answered nonchalantly. Of course you would brush that off, Percy said, his head shaking. Hey, there are worse ways to go. The death child argued with narrowed black eyes. But anyway, Naruto uses his duplication thing, Cage Bunshin, Annabeth said, remembering the technique that had more often than not saved their hides. Yeah, that, Nico said, he used the Cage Bunshin and took out 2 mercenaries that were hired to capture the bridge builder's family. Ah, hostages, Ares said with fondness, getting eye rolls from the other gods. Hostage situations were very few between the gods nowadays. Hades did the last one and it was a shoddy job at that. He gave an inspiring speech to the builder's grandson, which led to the kid running around the village begging others to rise up against Gato. Well, he has poetic inspiration down, Hermes said with a smile to Apollo, who was grinning wide and bright. Nico then grinned. The best part is what came afterwards. Apparently, after Naruto's team left, the village named the bridge after him. They called it the Naruto Ohashi, in honor of their hero. The Great Naruto Bridge, Annabeth translated loosely in awe and a bit of jealousy. I know, Annabeth cried out, to have a bridge named after him, lucky. The girl pouted. That did not happen anymore with demigods. Lucky olden day heroes. No way, Grover said in disbelief. How come Naruto didn't tell us about this? I don't think he knew, Nico said. Ah, unsung credit. Apollo said in a narrative tone, looking beyond the distance dramatically, the hero, walking the dirt-covered path after the day is done. The people sing praises and offering him wealth, food, and women. He grinned but was smacked upside the head from his glaring sister, getting him to zip up from the rest of what he had to say. Kushina told me she had discovered it by accident while exploring the underworld. She met a man she never expected in a million years to be down there. What was the man's name? Percy asked out of curiosity. Nico shrugged before he gave his answer. I dunno. All she kept calling him was Ero Sennin or perverted toad. Wasn't that Naruto's teacher? Jason asked. Yes, Artemis said, her lips pursed and turned towards her brother. Yours as well when you were immortal, correct? He. Apollo laughed awkwardly at the fact he had a super pervert for a teacher. The 5 continued to walk until they came across another exit. As they left the labyrinth for the second time on their quest, the world around them had changed, not that they knew it. Days had passed during Nico's tale rather than minutes. And in the past few days, many things had happened for the other quest takers, including the reveal of a secret regrettably kept from someone who deserved to know it. Finally, we see the reaction. Talia frowned, wondering how she was going to react. Jason smiled a little, wondering as well. It was sure to be interesting. The siblings born of the woman named Grace knew that much. Chapter end.